This video is sponsored by Keeps. One of the most common fears among men is hair loss. In fact, it has been proven that 2 out of 3 guys will experience hair loss by the time they're 35. Thanks to Keeps, this fear is essentially one of the past. Keeps is an online subscription service dedicated to helping men keep their luscious locks. Keeps is doctor recommended and delivered straight to your doorstep using clinically proven treatments that help fight off symptoms of male hair loss at half the price of traditional pharmaceuticals, so there's no need to leave the house. These methods show proven results within the first 6 months of using Keeps' hair loss treatments. Keeps offers a variety of products offering routine that works for everyone, whether that be preventing hair loss, stimulating hair growth, or even just taking better care of your hair. Keeps allows you to easily subscribe and to be notified of your next prescription, so don't worry, you'll never run low on Keeps. Hair loss stops with Keeps. To get 50% off your first order, go to keeps.com/debunkfile or click the link in the description. That's keeps.com/debunkfile.
I'd buy that for $1.
Welcome to our Mega 4chan Deep Dive video. This video is a compilation of the entire first season of 4chan Deep Dive, including all 10 videos. We have a lot of great stuff coming up, but for the time being, Jiff and I figured we'd make a binge-worthy video to prepare you guys for Season 2. Make sure to stick around until the end of the video for the announcement of Season 2. But, with that out of the way, it's on with the dives. Hi, and welcome to Debunk File. My name is Sep, and today we're going on a 4chan dive. So while looking for ideas for videos, I always try to find something interesting in the depths of 4chan, mostly on the Paranormal board. Sometimes, if you get lucky, on the random board, you might find a gem. But what happens when you find a great topic, but there's not too much to cover on? You can only talk about a small mystery for so long. That's why we decided to compile the most unusual and strange mysteries, or even just anything intriguing enough. One last thing before we start. The plan for the future is definitely to continue this as a series. If you enjoy it, please make sure to leave a like and comment your thoughts on our new endeavor. Enough chat, on with the dive. The first one I found on the X board. It honestly for some reason freaked me out. Just take a listen. Was watching Scooby-Doo the other night with some buddies crunked out on some illicit compounds. One of them started freaking out about 3 hours in because he remembered something he called Baldfred. Says he used to have nightmares about it, and that there was a YouTube channel dedicated to Baldfred in the early 2000s. Just videos of Baldfred with domestic abuse and screaming audio. Anyone else remember this? Or hear about this? I think he's just lost it. Pick related, it's Baldfred. Maybe I'm losing my microchips, but I found it extremely unsettling. I looked for it everywhere and couldn't find it at all. The only lead I possibly have is the Venture Bros mystery van video on YouTube that shows Fred as being abusive, which might bring back to the abuse screams the guy claimed to remember.
Was on the way, Patty.
We've been driving to my parents' house for 10 years. You promised.
Patty, being out of your box isn't a right. It's a privilege. Baby, you don't want to go back in your box, do you?
No.
It could be fake in a couple of ways. It could be made up entirely, or the guy's friend could be completely buzzed out of his mind and just remembered something that never existed. I remember the night I found this. It was around 2 AM and I asked the Discord if they had any leads at all. You can thank Baldfred for the start of this series, since I truly wanted to talk about it extremely badly. Baldfred is one that definitely weirded me out. If you have any hunches or anything of the sort, make sure to let us know. Baldfred cannot go unnoticed. This one is quite the doozy, so buckle up. This one was definitely the closest to becoming a full video, and it's huge on 4chan, the NPC theory. As the theory goes, the basic people whom follow trends and like all things popular, the ones that spew the same wonderful weather out today and have you seen the sports game, and I know you all are thinking of one person in particular, a real boring Joe. Well, it just so happens the original poster, brace yourself for this one, thinks they are just walking flesh piles without a brain or a non-playable character in our world, like those lifeless characters in plenty of open world games. The blank stare, the same routine, the same dialogue over and over. It was posted in 2018 and has gained so much traction that nearly every visit to X, I get a whole thread about NPCs. It's got its own subboard within X and it gains popularity by the day. It's a super interesting theory and many horrible and dehumanizing things lie beneath it. Critics on the theory find it stems from prejudices. If you hate a person, it's completely justified because they aren't a real person, they're just an NPC. There isn't much to debunk about this. It's pretty much just a theory and most likely not true. And if you frequent 4chan, you know there's of course some of the strangest and most disturbed people on the internet you'll ever see. I definitely included this one because it's one of the most interesting theories I've ever read. It's just so in-depth and thought out. Are they really your best friend? Or are they just a lifeless NPC? The next one is more of just a fun story than a complete mystery. 16 years old in the late 90s, home alone one night and my family is out at a restaurant. I was grounded for calling my little brother after he kicked me in the little brother got off scot-free. I didn't and still don't do drugs, pretty decent kid for the most part. I'm laying in bed staring at the weird popcorn looking on the ceiling at night until I hear the trash cans rattle. We lived in a rural area, so raccoons and opossums were common. I grab my pellet rifle and walk back to the door and stop when I hear chattering. It sounded like chirping and clicking. I really don't know how to describe it at all. I quietly open the door and walk out to where the trash cans were. I see little greenish gray skinned things. They had pointy elf ears and were no taller than a medium-sized dog. They had large, completely black eyes and slits for mouths. They were really skinny, so skinny to the point that I could see their bones and rib cages. Sorry for the drawing, I'm really not that great at drawing. One's rummaging through the trash can while 3 others are tearing up trash bags and messing with the garbage. I shoot one and the pellet goes into its back. It didn't bleed, but it turned around then made a loud shrieking noise. They all turned around and started shrieking. The little gremlins start throwing garbage at me and I bolt back inside and lock the door. I stay in my room until my parents get home. While waiting, those things threw rocks at my window. They weren't strong enough to break it, but they did crack it. I've never seen them again and hope I never do. I know this wasn't really scary, but I wanted to get this off my chest. It's most likely fake, but I really wanted to include this one because the art honestly looks a lot like our buddy Freddy Freaker, and I thought it was just really intriguing. I'm curious if this is just a story, or if it was possibly crawlers, the gray skin and the noises. Maybe this takes the crawler mystery farther, and there's variants or mutations on them. Maybe I'm reading too much into this, or is it something a lot more sinister? And be careful checking your dumpsters late at night. This one we're going deep into 4chan for. It's quite the ancient mystery. The mystery of the Camerahead's creepypasta. A lot of 4chan veterans of course will recognize this one. The Camerahead creepypasta is a thread that showed up on 4chan in 2008. It was about how the OP knew there were humans with hidden cameras in their eyes just waiting for the right time to strike. But this mystery isn't if they're real or fake, oh no. The original post is completely shrouded in mystery because it doesn't exist anymore. It's completely lost. Many have tried to check the Wayback Machine, but to no avail. They've checked 4chan archives and even asked people for the original thread, just hoping they'd have what they wanted. Every now and again on visits to the X board, you'll get someone speaking out that the post never existed, or that they remember it existing, but it's been so mistranslated since the original source material isn't available. Whatever anybody says is completely true and completely fake. We don't know who to trust or who to turn to. As of now, it is completely nowhere to be found, and the search continues for the Camerahead's post to this day. As stated earlier, the plan for these 4chan deep dives is to make it a series alongside debunk videos and the extremely rare top 5s we've done. If this video does well and people want more, it will definitely continue. It's a perfect way to shine light on creepy stories and smaller mysteries that are still intriguing on their own. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to follow all of our social medias for updates and exclusive content, all linked in the description. Especially consider becoming a patron, as even $1 a month really helps and you guys get some slick rewards. And of course, make sure to like this video, share this with your friends, and subscribe. As always, my name is Sep from Debunk File. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye. Hi, and welcome to Debunk File. My name is Sep, and today we're going on yet another 4chan deep dive. The response to Volume 1 was outstanding, so make sure you like this video and comment if you'd like us to make a Volume 3 eventually. Enough talk, time to dive. This first one I found on X, 4chan's very own Paranormal board, where most of our topics for these dives come from. This one I call the Orange Skull. It reads as follows. Yesterday watching YouTube at 4 AM, listening to relaxing music, everything is cut off. When I want to put the same video back, a black skull appears with an orange background for 2 seconds. And the TV restarts. The truth shit on my legs. Someone more happened? Yeah, it has a little bit of broken English, but at first glance it looks to be some kind of creepy story, but I will never rest with just that answer, so we're going to go a bit further. He mentions how he was watching YouTube and the skull popped up. As far as I know, there's no way a hacker could hack into YouTube on your TV, phone, or any device. Now it would be a completely different story if this was cable, as we've talked about TV intrusions before on this channel, and how they work and how hard they are to trace. So yeah, I would definitely say this is something that had to have been just a creepy story. I did some further research and tried to see if there were any videos that might have gotten in this guy's autoplay on YouTube, possibly a creepy ad or something, but who knows. Maybe one day the skull will shine again and we will have our answers. The next one was extremely recent, only about a month ago, and had complete national coverage. The Bryan, Texas Sky Screams. This is definitely one of the creepiest things we've ever looked at least on its surface. On the 27th of May, citizens of Bryan, Texas recorded bone-chilling screams that sounded like they came from nowhere.
Listen to this. There's a sound screaming. It's like a scream. It's so freaking loud, and it's coming from up in the air, like up there. It's been going on now. That is so freaking loud.
That is horrible.
Of course, theorists got to work and cooked up all sorts of lunacy, ghosts, mythical sirens, and all sorts of supernatural phenomenon as one's minds turns to when unexplained things start to run amok. These screams have a multitude of interesting theories, the most popular being a gas leak at a nearby school, since all of the recorded screams take place in the same area. A commenter on the subreddit r/Texas also stated the screams were heard in Portland and Phoenix, and I can't prove or disprove it, so we have to take it as partial fact. So if it wasn't a leak, the next best theory is the storm theory. In all the videos you can clearly see a mild storm going on in the background. Maybe forceful winds caused a pole or something of that sort to screech. It makes sense since the screams are constant, same pitch and same time in between until they stopped. Another storm-related theory is how the lightning hit and where it hit, possibly causing strange scream-like vibrations. This is a tough one to crack. When we thought we had our answer, we just got further and further from the truth. Who knows, maybe humanity did accidentally open a portal to another dimension. Only time will tell. Our next entry is a very strange animal-related one posted to the Paranormal board. It reads as follows. Now here's something you don't see every day on X, something that's actually paranormal. I'm a licensed DVM and have been working as a vet for almost 20 years now, and on Tuesday I saw something I can't explain. A lady came in with a sick, dying, pregnant cat, so we rushed her in for emergency surgery and a C-section. As soon as we opened her up, we noticed she had internal bleeding. To make a long story short, we found what was crazy. We pulled out a fetus with horns. The horns had punctured the uterus, which was the cause of the internal bleeding. Why I say paranormal and not freak is that something that shouldn't have horns can't just grow them. Babies of animals that have horns are not born with horns. For obvious reasons, they grow from buds on the skull, like with a buckling. But this little guy had a full set of horns. Here's some pics. This one had Jiff and I completely baffled and leaves us with no jumping off points to discuss any theories because, well, we don't really have any. Like I said, we are completely bewildered by this post. I can't just outright call it fake, because it looks pretty damn real, but who knows? Maybe it could be some weird bait post of some creepy art experiment. It's obvious, and it is stated in the post that cats are scientifically unable to grow horns out of their head, but it looks so convincing, and there's really no way to prove it's a hoax. I really have no words for this strange horned cat. If there are any vets out there, please let us know your thoughts on this very odd creature. The next post also comes from X, and it's quite the doozy. Be living in a house with some other dudes. Basically nowhere outside of the city, it's just trees. Practically harsh winter. This night isn't so bad. Power goes out. Are you afraid of the dark? Nickelodeon. Look outside off my enclosed porch to see if I'm the only one. The whole area is out. I forgot to mention that I'm a bit of a photography nerd. That comes into play here. Well, there is nothing to do around here. Think to myself that I have never seen such a mass power outage like this before. This might be a cool time to do a little bit of photography. Step outdoor, feeling more anxious than usual. Just calm down, dude. Don't let this get the best of you. Continue on and take some cool photographs of card light trails. Can't shake the feeling that something has been following me. Getting really nervous. It's too windy to listen around me. Well, let's call it a night. Head back to house. Just one more picture.exf. Take pic of the house I live in. Feeling really on edge, almost panicky. What the fuck is going on? I never let myself get this bad. Really feel like I'm not the only one out here. Inside, taking off boots and snow gear next to door. All of a sudden, something slams into the door. I myself right there, lock the door and get back to my room. Lock myself in there, calm down enough to sleep. Next day I go through my pics. Get to the pic of the house. This picture is fucking creepy as hell. Can't believe my house looks like such a nightmare. Wait a second. Shadow doesn't look right. Look closer. Fucking got goosebumps writing this shit. Sorry for the length. See what looks like some guy with a pig head staring right the fuck at me. I lose it. Ever since then I've been hearing banging around my house like a couple of times a week and night. Whatever the fuck this thing is, it wants in. I'm losing sleep over this. Pic related. It's the picture that I took. It's most likely just a story, and there's really not much to debunk, but it is terrifying and quite a good read, so I figured I'd share it with you all. Also, fans of our channel will recognize quite a familiar face in this story. Pighead, which obviously reminds me of Playground. Who knows, maybe they are related and this is a sign of our old friends coming back. We'll have to wait and see. As of now, I'd advise you all to lock your doors and report any strange pig-looking men. Be safe and may God be with you all. It is now time for our last post, but don't worry, we saved the best for last, and this is definitely one of the most popular 4chan posts of all time, the glowing syringe experiment. A man had a syringe full of glowing blue liquid and said that the 37th comment gets to decide where it is injected. The 37th comment decided to suggest his wrist, so he did it. You can see his veins filled up with the glowing liquid, and then he was never heard from again. This would seem pretty impossible to debunk, but there is something called the glow stick theory that might explain it. It's basically as straightforward as it sounds. The dude just injected glowstick fluid into his wrist, but the thing about glowstick fluid is that it doesn't show up in your veins, it literally just kills you, so there's no way it could be that. Jiff and I have come up with our own theory. So what if the syringe is really filled with glowstick fluid? Fine, that could add up. But what about the veins? Well, if you look closely, the syringe doesn't appear to be actually inside his arm. It looks like it's just resting on the top, and the glowing veins honestly just look like invisible ink drawn on his wrist. Also, something to note is that veins don't actually look like that. So, it appears we have debunked one of the oldest and most interesting 4chan mysteries. Obviously, if something comes out against our claim, then we would be happy to tackle this again and truly get real, solid answers. As I stated at the very beginning of this video, make sure to let us know if you want more of these deep dives on smaller 4chan mysteries that are too small for their own video, but too interesting to never talk about. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to follow all of our social medias for updates and exclusive content, all linked in the description. Especially consider becoming a patron, as even $1 a month really helps and you guys get some slick rewards, and of course, make sure to like this video, share this with your friends, and subscribe. As always, my name is Sep from Debunk File. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye. Hi, and welcome to Debunk File. My name is Sep, and today we're going to be doing yet another dive into the deep, dark depths of 4chan. Before this video begins, I want to give a quick warning, as some of the topics discussed here are disturbing and tragic. Some of the content lying ahead isn't for the faint of heart, so please proceed with caution. Unlike our normal videos, for these, there really is no intro needed, but for today, I do want to very quickly say something before we begin, and it's pretty simple. Finding these posts for our deep dives isn't really easy, and so if you ever see anything creepy on 4chan or know of something creepy that has happened on 4chan, feel free to either comment it or send it to any of our various social medias, all of which is of course linked in the description. And we will make sure to credit you accordingly, so please make sure to send us whatever you find. With this being said, let's just get to the task at hand. It's time to go on a dive. The first post on our dive today is about a supposed phenomenon happening in France right now as we speak. Let's first read what the OP said about this situation. Hey X, I heard you liked unexplained mysteries, so here's an actual case to investigate. Maybe you already heard about the huge wave of horses mysteriously killed, tortured, and mutilated in France. Everything begun around January, but things have really speeded up since August, with almost a horse killed every day in the whole country. Actually, it seems we have around 40 cases of horses killed or horribly mutilated in the whole country, almost in every area of the country, which seems to exclude a single criminal and had led police to investigate on internet to find a secret cult, a sect, a satanic group, or an internet challenge. The mutilations are particularly violent. Almost every horse attacked had its right ear severed and removed. A lot had been cutted on at least 30 to 40 centimeters, had their eyes burst, and their genital organs destroyed or removed. Some had been dismembered and or drained of their blood. No bullshit. What do you think? Here's a map of the attacks. Yeah, this might be one of the single weirdest things I have ever seen in a really long time. Of course, I naturally went all over the web to read more about this utterly insane phenomenon, and most of what I read was honestly summarized pretty well by the OP, including ear removals and full-on blood drainage. However, with some articles, I actually found a few first-hand accounts. As seen with this small excerpt, this man was literally warding off 2 attackers who cut the tails off of his ponies, injuring him in the process, and fleeing away in a vehicle. Police actually made an e-fit portrait of what one of the men that attacked supposedly looked like, and this is a picture of it. As the OP said, these killings are likely done by a large amount of people, and the main thing that supports this is the map that was released of all of the attacks that have happened, which as you can see covers a pretty large amount of land, and with literally about a horse being attacked / killed every single day since August, this is clearly the works of multiple people. One thing that is really worth noting that I actually stumbled across was an event that happened on September 3rd. As we have stated, these attacks have been exclusively on horses, and that is true, except for September 3rd, because on this day, there was actually an alpaca found dead with its ear cut off. This is the only non-horse that was attacked, and it only raises more questions. As stated, there's been about an attack a day since August, which is absolutely insane. But the very first attack was actually all the way back in January. But still, as of now, there is not a single thing that has been done, and the attacks are still going on. The fact that the police hasn't figured this out yet is honestly baffling to me, especially with the insane violence and frequency going on here, so I would definitely suggest keeping your eyes open on what goes down with this mystery for the foreseeable future. With the cops not being able to figure this out, and with us not even being close to France, there isn't even really a single thing we can theorize about. Of course, most people think this is some underground cult, but as we said, there has literally been nothing at all regarding answers. So we're gonna have to leave this one here, as yet another insane event in one of the most insane years of all time. The next post on our deep dive here today is one that I'm simply gonna title The Unknown Caller. Just take a listen. I'm so fucking scared right now, I shit you not, this just happened to me and I can't fucking sleep. Be me, 27-year-old male. Be sleeping in what used to be my grandma's house. It's been years since she passed away. Be homesitting for almost a year now. Have a home phone but never use it. No one calls and I use my cell phone only. Phone rings in the middle of the night. Wake up and pick it. Here's the conversation.
Hi.
Hi.
Good night.
Good night.
Thanks for picking up. I wanted to say something to you.
Uh-huh.
I really think you're a good person. God bless you.
Oh, okay.
Good night.
Good night.
The voice sounded like a recording of sorts, but it waited for my responses to continue. It could have been male or female, I couldn't figure it out. It wasn't a voice that sounded old or childish, anything. I just can't imagine the person that called. Only thing that eases me is that my cat is relaxed. Any thoughts? So yeah, this one isn't really much of a mystery. I mean, technically it is because the OP has no idea who was calling him, but we more so just wanted to share this one because something about it made the hairs on my robotic neck stand up as well. It was just a really odd event that, if true, definitely would have me questioning what the hell just happened to me too. The third post on our 4chan deep dive is actually one of the most famous posts in all of 4chan, so if you are an avid 4chan user, you are definitely going to know all about this one. But despite all of that, I must say that this post is both surreal and incredibly depressing, so I'm going to have to ask you all to proceed with caution for this one. If you've somehow never seen this post, you are definitely going to be in for a ride, as this post surrounds a 4chaner who finds a grenade. Let's just get into this. As you can see by his first post here, the OP mentions going through some things after his dad died, and of these things was somehow a grenade in there, and so the first thing he decided to do was ask 4chan what he should do with the grenade. Naturally, nearly everybody thought the grenade he was holding was fake, and so they had him send other pictures of it so they could verify if it was real. Once that was over with, they then suggested things for him to do, one of which was him undoing the grenade and flushing it down the toilet. And he did. After that though, he went silent. That's when an article came out. When translated, it says, Oscar Lopez Ortega, 17 years old, was found dead after registering an explosion inside his home. Police elements arrived at the scene at 8:45 p.m. yesterday. And with that, you have one of the most tragic things I've ever seen on the internet. For those of you questioning the validity of this, not only did this article come out the exact same day as the 4chan post in question, but the police in this article arrived at the home in question just an hour after the OP's final post. One thing I want to address really quickly revolving this is that the aforementioned time, because as you'll see, the final post was at 8:44, and the cops supposedly came to the apartment at 8:45, which is obviously impossible unless they were literally teleporting entities. However, this was actually due to time zone differences, and the police actually arrived 1 hour after the tragedy. When creating the idea for this series, we did it because 4chan had the possibility of two things. It had good, fun, creepy posts, and then it had absolutely disturbing, tragic posts that show off the darkest things you can possibly see out there. And well, this is clearly one of them. If you've noticed, this video has truly had some pretty dark stuff in it, whether it be the horrific murders of livestock or the tragedy we just talked about. But for the last post, let's brighten it up a bit. This final post is about a good old TV hacking, this one happening in Germany. Let's read the post. Here we go again, 2004 in Germany. Someone/thing hijacked a ProSieben, a German TV channel, while commercials are running. Green texting experience. Picture is static for solid 30 seconds. After that, some sort of alien repoid was standing behind a desk saying something. He's looking to his left, looking back at the camera. He's confused. So am I, watching this. Picture goes static again, commercial goes on like normal. Confusion. On the day after the commercial ran, some other shows pick it up and talk about it. Yeah guys, it's a pirate advertisement for Halo 2, all good. They rerun the clip. It's manufactured and completely different. WTF. I'm not saying a lamo or whatever, probably just somebody hacking the actual channel and messing with them, and they are trying to cover it up to keep integrity, but whatever. I was looking for almost 15 years now. If somebody has recorded it on VHS, I even offered to pay £100 on local market sites, etc. Some lad uploaded the manufactured rerun of the commercial on YouTube. I've posted it here a few times already over the last few years. Most of the comments are in German. You probably need to use Google Translator. 90% of them are also talking about it being different, etc. The other 10% say nothing is wrong. Anyhow, let this die like my hopes. Using the link he provided at the bottom of the post, it brings us to, as he said, a recreation of the supposed hacking. As you can see from the video, this would have been an insane hacking, almost reminiscent of Max Headroom in the way that some man in a costume suddenly appears on screen bobbing his head around while talking. I also find it important to mention that a lot of the comments here remember the hacking, and when combined with the fact that the remake video is pretty old, it really does seem like this hacking did happen. Unfortunately, the hacking of course wasn't on a big network like Max Headroom, and so it faded away. Which is a real shame, because if this hacking was anything like how the recreation shows, then this was something absolutely insane. As the OP said, this hack doesn't seem possible to find. However, if any of you guys somehow have a possible lead, feel free to write a comment about it below. If you didn't notice, in this video we only had 4 posts that we discussed, instead of the usual 5 or 6. And while these posts were more in depth than usual, I do have some good news, and that is the fact that we have a bonus post. Let's just get right into the real last post. Just a quick question, maybe an entomologist could answer. What the fuck is this? It's maybe 1.5 inches in length and was found in West Florida. Anyone know what it is? Looks like a bug. Thanks. Yeah, we both laughed at this post way harder than we probably should have, and we felt like we had to include it, especially with this being quite the dark video, as we wanted to end this video on somewhat of a positive note. And that's going to do it for this edition of our 4chan deep dive. Obviously, this was definitely the darkest dive yet, but at the end of the day, when coming up with the idea for this series, we knew that it could get this dark, as 4chan has its really creepy reputation for a reason. But I hope you all enjoyed it regardless. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to follow all of our social medias for updates and exclusive content, all linked in the description. Especially consider becoming a patron, as even $1 a month really helps and you guys get some slick rewards, and of course, make sure to like this video, share this with your friends, and subscribe. As always, my name is Seb from Debunk File. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye. Hi, and welcome to Debunk File. My name is Sep, and today we are making yet another return to the deep, dark depths of 4chan. It's been quite a bit since we've done one of these, but if you have seen these before, I'm gonna spare you all of an intro here. Simply sit back, relax, and let's go on a dive. First up on tonight's dive, we have a post about someone simply asking if anybody has ever visited a site by the name of AlienZoo.com, and subsequently wondered if it actually featured real info on aliens. With the way this whole post was worded, it was obviously apparent that the site in question was no longer up, and to no surprise, visiting the website does indeed show that AlienZoo was currently unavailable at this time. This obviously raises questions. What was on this site, and why would it no longer be available? Of course, like this poster said, the natural thought would be that of course it had some super intense info/information about actual aliens. However, let's see what this site truly had on it. And this of course involves using the handy dandy Wayback Machine. The first snapshot of the site that doesn't show it being unavailable comes from February of 2019, and the site in question is interesting to say the least. Honestly, I can't even say that it's a run-of-the-mill conspiracy site, because while it would be easy to say that, it truthfully doesn't even really look like the site itself is taking what it says all that seriously. It just looks like a fun little site dedicated to telling stories, of course, about aliens. It even looks like it could be borderline satirical, as it does have a humorous aura to the whole thing. There is a surprisingly really large amount of archives about this site that go back as far as the year 2000, so for the fun of it, let's take a look at more of these archives. Maybe the site truly used to be a little bit more serious. The first archive that actually shows something besides the main screen is an archive from January of 2007. This one shows one of the articles that you would of course see on the home page. And really, it is just your run-of-the-mill UFO sighting article. It doesn't read as anything more or anything less. It is lengthy, but it's not anything that reveals insane information that would have to make it get taken down immediately. Stuff like this really exists everywhere. Going back some more, January of 2006, we do definitely have a post that is much more conspiracy oriented, as well as an older design of the home page. But again, there is stuff like this out there. It's surely not something that would make the website have to go down, and while the archives go on for a very long time before this, and even occur with more frequency, it really is much of the same. The only differences are various website design changes. In conclusion, it's just a run-of-the-mill alien website. There is nothing huge revealed here that made it have to be taken down. So I guess the one other question to ask is, well, why was it taken down? The likely answer here is really simple. The reason the site is down is probably because its domain name expired. This is a pretty common reason for why a website would go down, and with it clearly not being taken down by the government trying to hide some insane truth about extraterrestrial creatures, this is most likely what's happening here. Also, with a super large 4-year gap between archives from the years of 2013 to 2017, it's possible that this has even happened before, as there was no such gap even close to that big before or after. The waning popularity of the site is also apparent from the archives, as they were at a clear peak in the mid-2000s and tanked from then. Maybe the owner or owners of the site simply decided that the lifespan of the site was done. That pretty much concludes our saga of AlienZoo. Perhaps it will one day return to the cyber world. For now, let's continue the dive. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to come face to face with Bigfoot and be able to successfully eliminate it? Well, then this next post is for you. This is a condensed version of an old set of photos from X that was titled How to Kill, which is at least 12 years old according to the dates on my files at least. Very likely it was LARP, and still contains the original spelling errors, but on topic and interesting anyways. As you can see, this thread is about how to kill various cryptids throughout the world, and as it says, when they mean various, they truly do mean many. And when they mean many, the process of taking these cryptids out are explained in extreme detail. As for the condensed file, I downloaded it, and it contains 10 entire pages doing exactly what it said it would. And well, yeah, the methods for killing these cryptids are just as in-depth and specific as it had said. Here's an example. For the Kraken, according to this user, this is what was said. unfortunately murdering Kraken is simpler than it seems. Ensure it surfaces first before injecting it with a massive dose of tetrodotoxin, a poison found in the Japanese blowfish. As Kraken are native to the North Atlantic, they are very unacquainted and therefore vulnerable to this very potent poison. The creature should expire and under its own great weight, sink below the ocean. This is only an excerpt from the Kraken section, and this is just one of 10 pages worth of these descriptions. And remember, this is the condensed version of his posts, as the originals are said to be much, much longer than what was put here. Safe to say, this is insanity. This post is most likely LARP, but at the same time, there is just so much detail as to what must be done to each of these creatures. It just truly leaves us in awe. It is definitely an incredibly interesting read, and hey, maybe this is the reason we don't see cryptids anymore. The next post on our deep dive is a very simple question, but one that absolutely piqued my interest. What is the evolutionary purpose of the Uncanny Valley? This is a question that I somehow never even thought about, even though the Uncanny Valley was a highlighted point in a previous particular video of ours. Before getting into the research, I wanted to quickly define what the Uncanny Valley is. While I am sure nearly everybody here knows what it is, just in case you are somebody that isn't familiar, here you go. The Uncanny Valley is basically the response that humans experience when viewing something that is extremely close to looking human, but doesn't. This is most commonly seen on robots, but can also be seen in CGI, whether that be in movies or video game graphics. In another instance we have seen, it may even extend to certain animals. The most common reaction you would get to seeing these things is minor discomfort, but for many others, this discomfort can be quite extreme. The term was actually first coined in the 1970s. A professor at the Tokyo Institute of Technology first explained that the more human-like a robot appears, the more appealing it is, but only to a certain point. As he described, extreme discomfort in these robots getting too close to human-like, while of course never being able to be exact. As the post said, we obviously don't know why we react this way to seeing these types of things. Studies have shown little kids reacting this way and, of course, adults doing the same, showing that this is definitely a reaction that is embedded in the brain from the beginning. Of course, the question still persists. Why does this even make us so uncomfortable? What is the point of us reacting like this? Well, we don't have a definitive answer for this, but we do have a handful of theories, so let's go through those. The most compelling theory I found revolving around this would have to be the categorization theory. This theory proposes that because our brain categorizes human and non-human differently, when something is seen that seems to simultaneously fit both categories while also not fitting either category, it simply leaves our brain confused and unable to fully categorize what it is seeing, which triggers panic in it, causing this reaction. There are many other theories, such as one where it's claimed that our instincts think of these off faces and associate them with death and disease, which is why it makes us so uncomfortable. But that one really doesn't do it for me. There are even many scientists that don't believe the Uncanny Valley is a real thing, although with some of the studies I've seen, that's really one that I'm not sure about. The first theory I found is by far the most likely one to me, but if any of you have any theories you'd like to share, please feel free to comment them down below. Last up on our 4chan dive is something simply titled The Nuclear Myth. The title is pretty self-explanatory. As you can see, the user literally just asks about something called the nuclear myth. Pretty normal stuff, right? Well, not exactly. After saying this, the user was just banned. This raises several questions. Of course, the obvious question is, why exactly was the user banned? But besides that, we don't even know what the user in question was even referring to when mentioning this supposed nuclear myth. So let's attempt to get to the bottom of both of these questions. As for what the nuclear myth even is, there are two possible theories that I've seen. The first of which is the possibility that this user was referring to the conspiracy theory that nukes just don't even exist. This is an extremely convoluted and ever-changing conspiracy theory. It's so ever-changing that from person to person, you might hear a completely different explanation as to why nukes don't exist. As a result, We're not going to get into the details of every single variation of this theory. It'd be pretty much impossible. But this is a very solid possibility as to what this user may have been referring to. After all, this is 4chan. Conspiracy theories are really a dime a dozen over here, so I personally find this to be quite possible. As for the other possibility, the user may have been referring to the theory that nukes have actually existed since Babylonian times. This is a conspiracy theory that isn't nearly as convoluted and ever-changing as our aforementioned one. Basically, it stems from a Babylonian hieroglyphic. As you can see, this hieroglyphic seems to depict the king at the time dropping a nuclear bomb, and a subsequent explosion ensuing as a result. I dug and found out that this is quite the controversial theory, as there is massive speculation from both sides as to whether technology such as this could have even been possible, or if this hieroglyphic was even as old as it is claimed to be. But in reality, the truth behind this theory isn't really the point here. The point is, this is quite the popular subject, and it is very possible that this was what the OP was referring to when creating this post in question. As for figuring out why this user could have possibly been banned for posting something so seemingly mundane, it gets extremely difficult to pin it down. I'm sure you all know that 4chan gets much worse than this. This site has a long history of horrific and vile content, light years worse than what was seen here. This site was, since the beginning, a place with limited moderation, as that's kind of the point to it. The only times where you can consistently be banned from it is if you mention that you are younger than 18, or if you post revealing content involving minors. Pretty much anything involving minors. Honestly, this is a complete and utter mystery that has us scratching our heads without even the slightest lead. The strangest part of it all is that when users repost the OP's question or even talk about the nuclear myth, nothing ever happens to them. This was a one-off incident, and that's what makes it so much more confusing. If any of you watching have any leads as to what may have happened here, please leave it in the comments below. Any theory is much appreciated, as we will be sure to read each and every comment as always. So, I guess that's it for the nuclear myth. Hi, and welcome to Debunk File. My name is Sep, and today we're going down our 5th 4chan dive. Before this video begins, I want to address a warning. This episode features quite a bit of disturbing content. If you are sensitive to discussion of blood, gore, or anything of that sort, consider clicking off the video now. This addition to the deep dive really isn't for the faint of heart, and features by far our most disturbing discoveries yet. Besides that, there isn't really any intro necessary here. All I'll say is that if you haven't seen our previous episodes, there's a whole playlist worth of fascinating and disturbing finds before this one, so go check those out too. With all of that out of the way though, let's just get on with the dive. For the first post on our dive here, we have The Mystery Sheep Killer. And well, let's just give this a read. Alright detectives, I'm gonna need an explanation real fucking quick because I'm starting to get a little bit worried. Part 1 of 2. Be me, live in rural Denmark on farm entire life. Own animals, most of them being sheep. Feels comfy man.exe. One night hear an absolutely blood-curdling scream about 5 AM. Words can't even describe it. Hear 2 of these. Feel a bit uneasy, but whatever. Since I live out in the country and next to a small forest, I'm used to hearing some ungodly dying screams of animals, so I didn't think too much of it. But shit was still exceptionally uneasy to listen to. Next morning. Spot nothing out of the ordinary. Day after this. Have electronic classes. Spot my dad dragging a sheep carcass through our back garden, presumably to the place where we bury the animals that die unexpectedly. I go out to check to inspect the corpse. He's right. Not only did the thing cleanly eat only half of its face cleanly to the bone, but it also devoured its tongue and its left ear. Pick is the pick I took of my sheep. I inspect the corpse closer in order to look for the death blow that killed my dear boy. There fucking is none. Whatever killed my dear sheep did not do it quickly. Snap a pick and check out the spot where my dad found the corpse. Get to the spot where my dad found the body. No sign of struggle. Okay, now I'm confused. .wat. All I saw were a few feathers. Situation around the killing is too unusual for it to have been one of the many eagles/hawks in the area, plus they never attack animals of this size. If it would have been a huge fox or some shit, it wouldn't have only targeted the face. A fox is the only animal in this part of the country where this shit would even be possible. Even then, it seems highly unlikely. What do you boys think it could have been? Yeah, I'm at a loss for words honestly here. What in the world could have possibly done this to the sheep? As you can see, the skin is just straight up gone and only bone remains. There isn't too much we can add on to here because honestly, we don't even know what to say. We definitely don't know of an animal that would kill a sheep this meticulously. So if you have any other theories in the comments, please write them down for us. For now though, we're just going to continue the dive. The next post on our dive is very short and very to the point. It simply says, I found this in the depths of NASA's high-res photos. Can anyone explain it before I never sleep again? In the photo, this appears. Pictured here appears to be some sort of extraterrestrial squid-like creature. I don't really need to explain why this is such a huge deal, but what I did want to get to the bottom of was, of course, if this was real or not. Because who knows, maybe this is some superbly done Photoshop. If it wasn't that, I wondered if it was some sort of smudge on the camera lens, but it seems way too detailed for that to be the case. Regardless, my first step here was to reverse image search it, and it's not fake. The original picture that the OP found is actually from the Apollo 8 expedition all the way back in the 1960s, and I was able to find a whole article about this phenomenon on cognitomatrix.com. Honestly, the article doesn't give too much in the way of new information, and actually gets pretty ridiculous towards its ending, but it does do a good job at explaining that this photo was actually quite a big deal upon its discovery. The biggest takeaway from this article, though, was a quote that it took from a Russian scientist in an article from 1997. The scientist stated that such materials for the same laws that enabled the birth of life on our planet may have been aggregated and involved in some form of life, adapting to extreme conditions such as those of the universe. These organisms are called Zeroid. So yeah, the scientist was basically arguing in favor of organisms being out there that adapted to the severe conditions out in space. And this photo here may be an example of that. I'm not sure how ready I am to say that our definitive proof of aliens in our solar system lies right here with this image, but I will say that it seems a lot more convincing than most of what I've seen. If any of you have any theories as to what is going on here, again, we'd love to hear it. The next post is simply known as the chlorine gas test. And again, as a quick heads up, this post contains some very disturbing content. With that being said, let's just get into this one. It begins with our OP stating that they need to test out a gas mask, and after that, they show that they are creating chlorine gas, asking what could possibly go wrong. Just a few minutes later, the absolute worst that you'd think of when seeing this happens. Holy fuck, it hurts. Might have to go to the hospital. Over the next few minutes, we get to see updates of our OP's skin quite literally melting off right before our very eyes, all while other users are in absolute disbelief and worry about what is occurring before them. The last post made was simply, "Goodbye, Kay." And that's it. The OP was never seen again, and in this instant, it's probably safe to assume the worst. As other users stated, it's hard to understand what was going through the poster's head when he was thinking up this idea, as chlorine gas does not just act on breathing pathways, it melts flesh, as we were very clearly able to see. I looked for possible articles in the sort about this in order to get some confirmation, and I was unable to receive that, but in this instance, there really isn't much of a mystery. Rather, what we just witnessed was one of the most tragic and disturbing things I have ever seen on the internet. This final post, for lack of a better term, is straight up insane, but off the initial image, it doesn't seem to be that much. As you can see, it shows a super blurry picture of some creature in the snow, and it just says, "Boy, I sure do love mutated penguin spiders." For 4chan standards, this is quite mundane and really is something you could find all the time, but when reading more in, it gets, well, extraordinary. The OP states that they are the foremost expert on this subject, and that their father was stationed in Antarctica at McMurdo Station. They end the first message by saying, "He's told me things. Y'all wanna hear some fucked up shit?" After saying that, this post follows. Some background. My dad is a doctor, was stationed at McMurdo for 11 months in the 90s, not saying what year because he was the only doc there and y'all could track me down. Frequently we went out on scientific expeditions. First and foremost, there were some areas people just didn't go to. They weren't environmentally hazardous, they just were avoided for one reason or another. When my dad asked one of the researchers who had been up there for 10 years, he went pale and told him to shut up. It was about 30 miles south, 10 east of McMurdo. They took a 5-mile detour around whatever the hell was there. In the following comments, however, he mentioned some creatures that his father saw. Thirdly, there were the Striders. Big 5-legged things that crawled across the continent at night or in snowstorms. There were sightings from the military personnel there. Most of McMurdo was in the US Navy. My dad had a Polaroid of one of these footsteps and a track from one of the Dakars they had, and it was easily a foot deep into the snow that was already packed down from a 10-ton truck. He was asked a number of things, but most notably and commonly was asked about just how big these Striders were. According to the OP, these things were absolutely massive. The OP mentioned being told that the footsteps were at least 30 to 40 feet apart and claimed they were 7 to 8 stories tall with 5 legs instead of 2. Yeah, insane. There was another story he told though, and this was a very specific one. Like Morrowind Striders? I don't know, never seen him. KK my guy, so as I said, my dad was a doctor, got yelled at by a superior officer who said they didn't need none of you unwanted smart types around here. Guy was a prick and hated anyone who wasn't a grunt or a researcher. Let leak to my dad that he was the replacement for a doc who had snooped around, tried to scare my dad and shit. Guy was a total douche. One day, a guy who my dad knows for a fact isn't at McMurdo or any of the nearby bases comes in, escorted, with severe lacerations. He's told that the guy fell. My dad calls bullshit. The cuts were too clean to be ice or rocks, plus no debris left in wound. Guy's delirious, and while he's under anesthesia, starts talking about things he probably shouldn't be saying. Something about, we let them loose, and they were frozen when we thought they were dead. He starts to say something else, but the guards yell at him to shut the fuck up and gag him. That's right, they gagged a guy who was only getting oxygen from a mask. My dad flips it and rips it off, yelling at them and asking what the fuck they are doing. The guard sticks his M16 in my dad's face, forces him back to the quarters, and doesn't let him out, till the dude is patched up and waiting on the next plane from South America. People were, of course, really entranced by this thread, as are we, but of course, many asked for some semblance of proof, especially since all there was up to this point was the absurdly blurry picture that the initial post have. Believe it or not though, they actually gave some, in form of a plaque. It was straight from Antarctica with their dad's name on it as seen here, and another item which has the words McMurdo Station right on it. This left us pretty shocked. However, the story doesn't even end there either. This thread was super long, but there is one more that we wanted to mention here, and that is this. I can't get it running tonight. I'm honestly really tired after work tomorrow morning, but my dad literally just woke up and I asked him and he told me something he didn't already tell me. So people die in Antarctica. It happens. It's cold and accidents happen. Every time someone died during the winter snowstorms though, he had to wait for them to thaw and sew them back together. Similar wounds from the person who dipped in the summer, except one man, another he didn't know, who was missing his lower half. This guy was carted in by similar guards, but not the same. His intestines had spilled out and my dad had to sew on fake clothes lower half after sealing up this guy's torso. They then dressed him in a battle dress. The official cause of death is hypothermia, but we both know that's bullshit. His lower abdomen from the end of the ribcage down has been ripped off violently. There's shit out there, Annans. You better believe it. With these posts all wrapped up now, this was definitely the longest and most in-depth post we've ever come across so far, but some questions still remain. Really, the main question is, do we believe this? On one hand, the OP did what few posts of this sort have ever done. They gave legitimate proof that their father was actually in Antarctica. On the other hand, proof regarding the cryptid itself is still yet to be seen, besides that super blurry image. This raises quite a few suspicions. That image is very conveniently blurry, and while the OP did show a computer and claimed that they would get it working, since it had higher quality image of the cryptid on it, they never did get it working, which really hurts this case here. A lot of the stories do also give me heavy The Thing vibes, which definitely wouldn't help either. At the same time, I'd imagine it would be very difficult to fake these plaques from Antarctica. I mean, sure, it could be done, but would someone really waste that much time and effort for a little 4chan thread? I'd say that's unlikely. Maybe the father really did work at this McMurdo station, and the OP was just creating a story that they knew would have the luxury of providing real proof, thereby upping its realism. That's what I put my money on in this instance. But hey, none of us have been to Antarctica before, so maybe it really does hide creatures beyond our mind's comprehension. That's going to do it for this edition of the 4chan Deep Dive. This was a much lengthier one than usual, and honestly, maybe the best string of posts we have found yet on our dives here. So we really hope you enjoyed this addition to our series. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to follow all of our social medias for updates and exclusive content, all linked in the description. We would also love you guys to consider joining our brand new Patreon, Debunk Plus. For only $1 a month, you get access to videos early, exclusive content, and our brand new podcasts, which come out every week. At the moment, we are on episode 9. And of course, make sure to like this video, share this with your friends, and subscribe. As always, my name is Sep from Debunk File. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye. Hi, and welcome to Debunk File. My name is Sep, and today we're going on our 6th 4chan dive. Once again, there isn't too much of note to say here before we get things started, so we're just going to get right into it. So strap up, and let's go on a dive. On our 4chan dives, we typically try to include at least one post in each video that is very well known, but fascinating nonetheless. And that will be the case here. The post of the 4chan bunker is one of the more famous threads in the website's history, and if you don't already know of it, you are in for a ride.
3 days ago, my last living grandparent, my mother's father, passed away at the age of 89. He was a World War II vet, and my mom tells me that after returning home from the Navy, he was never quite the same. In fact, he was pretty paranoid about nearly everything. I was never really allowed to stay at his house. In 1965, his wife died suddenly, with no real explanation. My mother tells me that my grandfather became extremely fearful of a nuclear war with the communists, and that he started to dig a bomb shelter out of the rock and limestone on his land. I had never seen the bomb shelter until today, when the family was going through my grandfather's belongings. Pig related, it's the entrance. I had only ever asked my grandfather about his hand-dug cave one time in my life, which was when I was about 16 or so, when we got together for Christmas. He didn't really seem to want to talk about it. He just told me to never ever go there because, in his words, it's just a damn. What the word in the blank was, I've never been able to figure it out. No amount of googling helped me determine what he said. All I know is it sounded like so air. The way he said it was creepy enough that I never asked about it again. This picture's a view back towards the door after you go down some steps. When my mother asked me to go and check it out and see if I could find anything worth putting in the estate sale. To be honest, I was pretty excited. I thought maybe I'd find old gas masks, non-perishable food items from the 60s, and maybe even some forms of old entertainment that he had planned to use to keep the family busy in the event of an attack. The picture is the first hallway, which curves off to the right at the end. The first thing I found was this rudimentary toilet. Of course, time wasn't kind to it, so there wasn't much left. It had obviously been in disrepair for years. I just snapped a picture of it and kept going. Although I did have to admire the work that had to have gone into chipping away the rock, one heave at a time. But further down the hallway, I came to nothing more than a bunch of old rusted garbage on the floor. I instantly felt my heart sink because I had such high hopes for what this exploration would yield. It was just beginning to look like my grandfather had just given up at some point on his dream of crafting a shelter. But you'll notice that, in the previous picture, the hallway curves off to the left. I was expecting to hit a flat wall of rock, but instead I found a huge iron door that was padlocked shut. Fortunately for me, it had become rusted to all hell, so I was actually able to just pick up a decent sized rock off the floor and hit the padlock until it busted the entire loop it went through. Opening the door was another story though. It was extremely heavy and had become rusted shut over the years. I found a shovel back in the garbage heap and used all my strength to force it open with a lever action. The only thing back here was a hallway that did abruptly end where he had stopped digging, but there was a doorway off to the right. I went through the doorway and inside, this room looked more like a cavern than a bomb shelter. As I looked around, I noticed this carving in the stone. At first I thought, oh, no big deal, maybe it just came back here to pray or something. But that's when I started to notice that there were more carvings. Suddenly I see this face, carved into the rock. There were faces everywhere. Seriously, it was as though there were a bunch of ghostly faces staring you down in that room. And here's another example. I noticed that while the previous one appeared to be a soft female face, this one was an angry male face. And there were really quite a few of them. I don't know, probably 6 or 7. And they were all carved into the walls as though they were facing that cross carving, worshipping it or something. And then I saw this one. Unlike every single other carving in this room, which were faces, this one was clearly meant to be a skull. It seemed very out of place, since I felt that the rest of the room had religious connotations to it. Why was there a skull? Well, I found out soon enough. I happened to look down at the ground below the skull carving, and there, sitting in a bunch of concrete rubble, was a mother fucking bone. And don't get me wrong, I'm not just a fucking Nancy. This was no deer bone. This was clearly a human bone. My heart was pounding out of my chest. As I started to look more closely, I saw more bones coming out of the concrete, as though human remains had been dumped in a batch of quick dry cement or something. Then I could have sworn I heard a quiet laugh from the corner of that room. And I fucking bolted. I ran out of that room like the devil was chasing me. I ran all the way out to the shelter and all the way back to the house.
And that about does it. As stated, this is a very infamous one, but it still remains one of the most fascinating on the platform. And like any 4chan post, we of course need to go over the validity of what we have just read. In reality, there are multiple ways to look at this. If you believe it is real, there would still be remaining questions, such as the many people that wonder if the bone that was found really belonged to a human or not. Some believers of this thread think that they may have been the bones of some animal, rather than a human. Of course, that doesn't answer nearly every question that would arise if you think this post is real, but it would answer the creepiest question. If you think it isn't real, you'd likely point to this just being some kind of set or place of that sort, and for it just simply being a little too ridiculous to think this all happened. For me, the main reason I don't think that this post is real would have to be with the way that it is written. It definitely has that author feel to it that makes me believe it is fabricated. We've actually caught flack for using this reason as to why some posts may be fake in the past, and that's because we're usually unable to give direct examples as to what we mean by that. Usually it's something that is hard to explain, but thankfully I do have a direct example as to what I'm talking about here. It all comes down to his comment about the word that he cannot remember, but almost does. It seems way too fitting that he can't remember the word, but leaves it just close enough to where we can figure it out. In this case, a word that is close to his pronunciation is ossuary, which refers to a site that is made to serve as a final resting place for human skeletal remains. I don't know about you, but that entire thing just seems way too fitting, and is exactly the type of thing I'm referring to when I make that point. That fact alone is enough for me to not believe that what happened here is legitimate. Even though I don't believe in the post, it doesn't take away from how creepy it is, and so I hope you enjoyed this read if you weren't already familiar with it. If you were, then I hope you enjoyed that throwback. For now though, we're just going to continue to dive. The second 4chan post of the night is one that is simply known as the Monin tunnels. The post reads, "Hi X. On one of the recent iceberg chart threads, someone mentioned the Monin tunnels not being on iceberg. When I went to Google what these tunnels were, the only results I got was the original thread and pic related. Does anyone know more about it?" Now, without seeing the image, this seems like a pretty run-of-the-mill post. However, the image in question is absolutely terrifying. As you can see, the image above almost appears to be of two men after a kill. And then repliers to this thread noticed that very quickly. With that being shown, now you can suddenly see why the OP wants to know this photo's backstory so badly. Is this truly what it appears to be, or is there something else going on here? Well, unfortunately, I do not know. 4chan has had posts of this level of darkness in the past before, but it's frankly impossible to prove or disprove anything in this entire post. With the OP not being able to read EXIF data, I decided to read it instead, and as expected, there wasn't anything in there. What makes it trickier is the fact that the OP stated this photo came from an iceberg thread, but they also didn't link said thread at all, and finding whatever thread this came from is, well, impossible. The only other step to take in order to find the source of this image is, of course, to reverse image search it. Unfortunately, though, it also yielded no results besides the thread we were reading, so that means the only thing we can do from this point on is speculate. While it's not out of the realm of possibility for some iceberg posts to find some real image of an atrocity being committed, it's also very easy for a photo of this sort to be staged. That is also something that has happened on 4chan in the past, and maybe what is happening here too. As for what theory seems more convincing here, I'm gonna leave this one to you guys. Feel free to write your input in the comments below on what you think is going on in this image. One thing is for sure though, that post haunted me when I first came around it, and I wish there was more to search for. With that being said, let's just continue the dive. Like our first post of the night, this next post is also a lengthy story. However, unlike that one, this one is basically unknown. I accidentally stumbled on it during a deep search in X's archives, and the story which I found is a true journey, to say the least. Hello X. I'm not well versed in the spoopy, so let me just tell you a story. A few weeks ago, I was at the library and I found a book called Imperial Dogmatic Spherical Holes. It disappeared since then, which means who knows what the fuck. What struck me about the book was the obviously amateurish binding, as if it didn't belong there, and there was no library sticker on the spine. Looked like something from a Vanity Press website. Sure enough, I take it home without checking it out, no sweat, because it looks X-ish. Mostly the book makes no sense other than the introduction, which is about how you're supposed to be high on cough syrup, or the rest of the book doesn't make sense. After the introduction, it's just a bunch of mostly English gibberish plus pictographs and seemingly random squiggles. I forgot about it for a few days until later when I'm bored and want to get high. So I think, what the hell, and drink about enough syrup for a third plateau trip. I've done DXM before, but I'm no experienced junkie. And crazily enough, the book starts making sense. And even crazier, it claims to be directions to some lost age of wit. Man, I don't know. And even crazier, the book speaks extensively about the town I live in and events that have taken place in the last few days, even though I got the book weeks ago. But of course, I'm high, so it's just part of the ride to me. Anyway, the book tells me to go to a cave near my house and not read any further until I do, because I need something there for the following pages to make sense. I try to read further anyway, but the pages are just blank, although a dark gray color. I decide to go to the cave because #YOLO. When I get to the cave, the next pages are no longer gray, but instead detail some kind of Africa tear dance that I'm supposed to do. And I start laughing out loud like it says stuff like, wave your arms to the east and repeat this syllable lo 3 times and whatever. By now you've predicted that I did it. Duh. The syrup feels like it's getting stronger, and suddenly I go fully out of it, and now I'm standing in front of a waterfall with a cave behind it. There's a creepy figure standing behind the cave, It looks a mostly featureless human with bluish gray skin and a simplistic face as if it was carved out of stone. At this point, I'm going to stop trying to set up the drama because I'm a writer, but basically what happened was this entity told me his name was Lomac, and that he was a nearly dead ancient being once called God, and that he found it interesting that a human would bother with him again after all this time. So I stand by the waterfall for what seems like forever and talk to Lomac. I don't really remember seeing his face move, but I can't really remember a voice either. It was more like I could just feel what he was saying to me, and I knew that he was male-ish. Lomac tells me that he's from a time before recorded history, when men were half men and religious ideas were barely even coherent. He says that he's become ignorant of Earth and almost forgot about it until I showed up, and after he picks my brain for what things are like nowadays, he says that he could be considered an early god of magic sorcerers. Then he asks why I came, and I tell him about the book. He doesn't know who wrote the book and says that he barely knows or cares how it worked, but that if I feel compelled that what I'm experiencing is the truth, then it would be possible to revive him on Earth if I want. So why not? We spend what seems like another eternity by the waterfall, and he supposes that he needs a sigil now. So I make the thing, I post it in the OP under his direction. I guess that's the official sigil of Lomac now. He says that he expects nothing from me as his prophet, and having a large mass of followers does not concern him. His mantra the whole time seems to be, expect nothing, and he was generally a really chill, possibly imaginary dude to talk to. Trying to wrap this up because I hate reading long posts on image boards, and I hate typing them even more when nobody's going to read them. Lomac details to me that specifics to make an altar for him, and various other nagging little details that gods apparently care about, although he seems less strict than, say, traditional religious scriptures. I'll post some if anybody cares. Eventually I wake back up at the cave, but the book is gone. I'm still blown as fuck on the syrup. It felt like I had a moment of clarity while at the waterfall, but now that I'm back to the real world, I'm high again and I can't even think straight. I make it back to my house, and a little later drew the sigil on my computer, plus wrote various things I can remember about the experience, and thus concludes this epic tale of, I still haven't made an altar, bought anything to try this out because I'm broke at the moment. So what was it, X? Some degenerate's drug adventure, a demon pretending to be a god, an actual forgotten god of yea ancient times. Your mother's tulpa? I don't know much about occultism. Does anything of this sound even remotely familiar? While that is the extent of this crazy story, the OP also provided instructions on how to revive Lomac, and 4chaners naturally tried it out, with some even claiming that it worked. Now that doesn't really prove anything to me, as anybody can just say it worked, and many people on the site would just say that to go along with it. But one thing that is very interesting to note is that unlike every other one of these posts, the OP did not abandon it. He truly stuck around until the end, answering any question that would come his way, and some of his answers actually helps this post's case, in a way. While I don't believe our OP saw a god and went on a true mystical adventure for a second, the fact that he was high for the entirety of all of these stories makes me wonder whether it was just some crazy trip. And what's even more telling is the fact that the OP also believes that that may still be possible, even with seeing Lomac a few times now. While that may definitely be what is going on here, the fact that there are no results when you search up this book, and the fact that there were also never any pictures posted of the book, it majorly hurts the likelihood of this story too. It may have been some crazy trip and the OP doesn't come off the way most of the people who make more clearly fake stories do, but the coincidences are still too much to ignore, and I don't buy this one either. With that being said, you can feel free to theorize with this one too, as it was an extremely fascinating read. But for now, we're going to get into the final post of our dive. So as you've noticed, this video had more lengthy stories than normal, but we are ending the video with our most terrifying find we have ever gotten so far. As a quick warning before we get into this one, I must say that this post includes some very graphic imagery, so viewer discretion is strongly advised. This is some serious disturbing stuff. It is simply known as, what does B keep in the freezer? And it begins with a very simple question. What does B keep in the freezer? Guess what's in mine? After this was posted, the board did what anyone would and began guessing. Some of the answers were as simple as cake, and some of them were as disturbing as a cat. But one of the guesses was a body. And the OP immediately chimed in and said that they were right. They said, well done, and showed what was in that freezer. What appeared before the users was quite literally a severed leg. People asked whose leg this possibly could have been, and others asked to see more, and more was what they got, including one with a hand that even had the random board scribbled on it, confirming that the leg was right in front of him. These weren't just images taken from somewhere. This post gets under my skin more than any other we have covered this far. I'm no expert on this subject, but this severed leg looks real to my eye. If this were to be done as a sort of prop, then it's an extremely convincing one. But if this is indeed a real leg, how did the OP get it? The most morbid possibility here is, of course, that this is some murderer. And while that is the first thing you may think of and could be possible, it just can't be proven. I truly hope that this is not what's going on here. We do always cite 4chan as the place with the most unhinged people on the internet, and while that does scare me here, I still can't say without a shadow of a doubt that this is what we are dealing with here. Maybe there is somehow a different explanation. Another likely theory as to how this person would have gotten this leg would be if they were a mortician. Obviously that would give you access to bodies, although I can't imagine that you come across completely severed legs too often, but what do I know? Whatever the case, I'd like to think that this theory is more likely than our first one, and again, there is a solid chance that we are looking at a prop here, but it just looks so real to me. I can't definitively say what's going on either. Truthfully, this post really got under my skin, and I truly can't make heads or tails as to what's really going on here. The only thing that's certain is that I will not be sleeping tonight. And that about does it for this edition of 4chan Deep Dives. As you saw, this video featured more long stories than we typically do, and we're curious to see how you all felt about that. So let us know how you felt about this selection this time around. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to follow all of our social medias for updates and exclusive content, all linked in the description. We'd also love you guys to join our Patreon Debunk Plus. For only $1 a month, you get access to videos early, exclusive content, and podcasts. I promise we're bringing the podcast back. They are coming back, and they will be here to stay. Of course, make sure to like this video, share this with your friends, and subscribe. As always, my name is Seth from Debunk File. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye. Hi, and welcome to Debunk File. My name is Sep, and today we are once again going on a dive. If this is your first 4chan deep dive, then welcome. We've had a lot of newcomers find us through this series, and I'm sure there's some more here as well. We really hope you enjoy this series. If this isn't your first one, then as always, sit back and let's get right into it. For our first post of the night, technically this may be cheating a bit, as the 4chaner in question found a horrifying discovery on Facebook, but nonetheless, it is something that must be seen. Even on the Facebook post, it shows somebody that had also found it, and wasn't the one that originally posted it. Regardless, this is what it says. Facebook isn't letting me share this and I wonder why. Not my post, just sharing it. I wasn't gonna post this, but I can't stop trying to figure out what the fuck this thing is. I heard something scream at like 11:30 last night and went on my side of the yard and found this thing. It was dead when I found it. Share with your friends. What is that? This is the main question people are asking, and with 4chan being, well, 4chan, naturally a ton of people thought it was some sort of extraterrestrial creature. Especially with the admittedly very strange claim of Facebook not allowing the post to be shared. Thankfully, reverse image searching the images in question yields many results. As you can see, there are a multitude of articles about the situation, and with that, there are a ton more alien claims. According to almost all of these articles, the sighting of this creature came very shortly after thousands of people reported seeing a UFO right in the area. I was also able to find the actual original posting of the creature. So it seems like the theory that this is actually some sort of alien is actually by far the most popular, but is that really what we are seeing here? Is this very post the proof that we have always been waiting for? Well, it isn't admittedly too likely, especially when stacked up against some other theories. The other main theory that I've seen is that this is some sort of fetus that was likely attacked by a predator, hence the disfigurement. Of course, the next question that would follow that is, well, what animal is it? And the most popular choice among that is that it is a deer fetus. Now, while I did do research, I don't admittedly have as keen of an eye or the best knowledge on the anatomy of a deer to confirm or deny that theory, but I will say that it is much more plausible than the alien theory, and it may also be able to explain that screaming too. Beyond that, some people even wonder whether it's a cryptid, or if it's fake entirely. While we can't wholeheartedly give an answer as to what this thing truly is, the deer theory definitely seems the most plausible, at least to us. But who knows? Maybe aliens truly have been hiding right under our noses the whole time. For our next 4chan post, we have a terrifying moment coming from a website I've actually used in the past before. Hello. Before I delete all traces of this, as it gave me an odd and unpleasant feeling, I wanted to write about it here so it is not lost forever. I recently found out about a website called artflow.ai, where an AI generates portraits based on whatever text you input. For fun, I tried all sorts of words to see what would come out of it, including words like Jesus, God, and Satan. First of all, the generated results surprised me, Satan especially, as he looked exactly like the appearance he had in nightmares I experienced a while ago. Since the website can only keep 6 generated portraits at a time, I wanted to save this batch I generated, including the Satan portrait. Well, when I went to look at my folder with all the saved images, the Satan portrait changed. All the other portraits were identical from the website except Satan's. I wish I was making this up, but I swear I'm telling the truth. His hair had become messier and more gray, as well as his beard. His skin tone changed and looks more cracked. He smiles with his teeth with an insane-looking stare, instead of the more stoic look from the image I generated. And worst of all, his eyes are glowing red, and it looks like blood is dripping from his lips. I don't know what to make of this. There could be some logical reasons behind how this could have happened, but not once in my life have I ever saved an image just for it to turn into something else. And of all the portraits I made, only the Satan one changed. As soon as I saw the thumbnail, I felt odd pressure and vibrations in my body, and my religious mother told me to instantly delete the file. I will upload it here first, and then follow up with a screenshot of what it looked like on the website before disappearing. I sincerely hope it will not affect any of you negatively as it did with me. I just do not want this information to be lost. Make of it what you will. God bless. He also shared images of some of the other portraits, along with what the Satan image originally looked like as seen here. To be honest, this isn't one of which I could properly give an answer for. It really does read genuine, but of course, it also isn't possible to literally prove that either. One thing is for sure, I definitely have never seen or heard of an image suddenly changing that drastically when saving it. As one last comment, the OP gave a possible theory as to what he thinks is the most logical explanation, having to do with the website possibly having a function to worsen any generated drawings of Satan, but that isn't true. While I wanted to believe the poster badly, I frankly can't. It seems just as likely that this glowing Satan was just another separate portrait made afterwards.
Not only that, but I myself actually wanted to test this out to see if it would happen too. This involved me literally waiting 800 entire minutes for the image to be made too, and after all that waiting, it didn't distort or anything. The original image is right here, and the one that I saved on my computer looks the exact same.
But still, the thought of an image that could actually be demonic was something that I found really intriguing, so it was certainly worth showing. If you have any different theories as to what could be going on here, we'd love to hear them. As for now, let's continue the dive. For our third post of the night, we have something that in some ways is slightly similar to our first post, but also much more disturbing. The day before yesterday, I was out walking alone in a woods in northern Scandinavia. I suddenly realized that the ravens are making a hell of a racket fighting over something. I figure it's probably a cadaver. Since I know the landowner, I figured I should investigate and inform him if I find anything odd. So I start walking over to the approximate location of the suspected cadaver, and sure enough, I see something lying on the ice of a frozen creek a bit further ahead. I start noticing puddles of blood around the cadaver in the snow, along with tracks that indicate a short but brutal struggle. I take a look at the cadaver and see it's a small roe deer. The odd thing is that it's in immaculate shape, with the exception that the neck has been eaten. Nothing else on the cadaver shows any sign of injury, which is very odd because whatever killed this deer, it wasn't wolves or an eagle. So I kneel down next to the cadaver to have a closer look. I reach out to move its neck to get a better look at the bite marks, and that's when I realize it's still warm. And not just lukewarm, it's full body temperature warm. Now it's pretty cold out, about -13 Celsius, with a strong wind chill. So it would have only taken a short while for the cadaver to start freezing, but even the blood on the ice was still liquid. Whatever killed this thing is still around here somewhere. At this point I get really paranoid and start looking around, but I don't see anything. So I take a closer look at the bite marks on the neck. The large blood vessels and the trachea have been bitten off very cleanly. It looks like something cut them with sharp scissors. So whatever killed this deer has very sharp, scissor-like teeth made for cutting through flesh efficiently. I look for tracks in the surrounding area, but I can't find any that make sense. The largest paw prints I find nearby are only slightly larger than fox prints, and it certainly was not a fox that killed this deer. I don't feel like staying any longer, so I snap a few photos and get the fuck out. On the way back, I call the landowner and tell him about it. He walked out there about 45 minutes later, but he never found the carcass. He found where it had been, and then he found drag marks. 3-kilometer-long drag marks that lead over a frozen lake he didn't want to cross. I asked him if he saw any tracks, but he didn't see any either. Now this is really freaking me out. The only thing I think that could kill something like this is an Arctic lynx, but they are quite large and leave paw prints much larger than anything I could find, and they don't drag dead deer for 3 kilometers in less than an hour. Looks like the deer was laying dead on the ice for a while since it had melted the snow in the ice. Then there are some drag marks. My guess is that the creature had just killed the deer and eaten a bit of it, then started dragging it off, but it only got a few meters before I came trundling conspicuously through the woods and chased it off. Also, this creature must be very light, since it didn't leave any tracks, and it could easily walk around in ice that was far too weak to bear me. Here's a close-up on the neck. Now, in regards to what the body looked like, I'm not trying to have a re-upload happen again, so sadly that can't be shown here, but we will link the thread in the description for those that are curious. Basically though, the neck was as described, completely gone, pretty much down to the bone. That is certainly a really interesting condition to find something in, along with all the other things that the OP mentioned, such as the fact that no prints could be found anywhere, and that it was supposedly dragged over an ice lake. There truly aren't any animals I can think of native to the area that would pull off such a feat, and of course, due to that, the suggestions of a cryptid entirely are popular among those who have seen this post. But if you have any theories as to what could have done this, once again, definitely comment those below, because as of now, we're stumped. But there is one thing that is certain. There is definitely something terrifying in those woods. For our final post of the night, we have saved the longest for last. What we have here is a series of ghost stories regarding a very specific house our OP grew up in, but unlike the majority of ghost stories I've ever read, these ones truly feel different. They genuinely creeped me out. So without further ado, let's simply get right into them. First, I'd like to make this clear, that what I'm about to say is 100% true. I'm not making this stuff up, I don't have any explanations, and I don't believe in God. I just want to share my experiences and see if anyone has been through something similar, and if so, I'd like to hear it. The curiosity burns me yet. The scientist in me has debunked all, even my own bizarre experiences. I put them down to imagination, but I'll let you decide. Anyway, here goes. The first thing I experienced was when I was around 3 years old, and so have no recollection of it. The story was only told to me when I was about 9 or 10, and was presented as fact. The story goes, we'd recently moved into a new house. Mum, 2 bros, and a sis, and they had all gone off to school, leaving infant me and Mum alone. Anyway, I'm upstairs doing whatever boys do at 3, and she's downstairs doing whatever mums do. So, after an hour, the story goes, I come down and ask, "Who's the lady laying on your bed, Mom?" I then go on to describe a lovely conversation that I had with some mystery woman apparently laying on my mother's bed, and then went on to give a vague description of this nice woman. Ginger hair, walking stick, I even had a name, Jenny. So my mother goes and checks. Nothing, and rightly puts it down to the imagination of a child and ignored it. A few weeks later, after we'd started meeting neighbors and getting settled in, when she got into a conversation with a neighbor named Val. Val mentioned that her mother had lived at our house for many years and had gone off to a nursing home because of ill health. She had died in the nursing home a few weeks before we moved in. She had ginger hair and had a walking stick. Her nickname was Ginny. That was the start of Ginny. Right after this, obviously, somebody suggested that they think these may be fake, but is interested anyways. To where the OP laments again about how they don't know what to believe. Before getting into the next story, one other thing to mention before getting back into these stories is that there are actually so many of them. I wasn't able to include each and every last one. Because of that, again, we're going to have all this in the description, but I figured I'd let you know that the screenshots I show aren't every single one of them. Anyways, let's get back to these. Okay, a few years later, I remember the event, but I'm not sure how old I was. I'm guessing 5 or 6. It's evening time, around 8 PM I'd guess, and I'm sitting playing in the living room with my mom who's watching TV. My bros and sis are upstairs along with about 5 or 6 friends. I can hear them upstairs playing music and chatting when suddenly the music stops, followed by the heavy footsteps of my brother's friends coming down the stairs and swiftly out of the front door. My sister is crying in the background and my mom is looking annoyed at the fuss. My brothers come into the living room and are quickly quizzed by my mom, to which they both looked at each other puzzled. Apparently, in front of around 8 people, a catalog had risen from the floor near my brother's bedroom door, flew across the room, and hit my sister clean in the face. Everyone was in agreement to the events, even my crying sister, and from that point, the house got a reputation. Last one, then I'm going. This was roughly the same year, so I'm around 8 or 9. I'd been out playing whatever with a friend called Lee, and we were arriving at my house. We walk in and he heads up to the stairs toward my room. I glance in the living room to see an empty house, then follow him up the stairs. I just got to the top of the stairs when I hear him shout, "Oh, what the fuck was that?" Not in a scared of monsters tone, but more of a fear of OMG spiders tone. I turn the corner and hear him again, but it sounds more urgent this time. Suddenly he bolts past me to the top of the staircase, apparently scared shitless. He then misses the first step, slips, and goes down the full staircase on his ass, hitting the bottom with a thump. I race down the stairs asking what's the matter, just in time for him to get to his feet. He looks straight into the living room, screams, and then runs out the front door straight into the road, narrowly avoiding being run over. His father hears this commotion from across the street and comes over asking him what had occurred. He mumbled something to his dad, then went into the house. I later knocked on Lee's door and was told, "I'm not allowed to play with you anymore." And he never did again. From that point on, friends were wary of coming to my house. I'd just like to add, Ginny never harmed me and I never felt threatened. I thought of her as a protector and my sisters would joke, "Yeah, she likes you." Apart from the book hitting my sister, nobody was harmed. People saw/experienced things in that house and I'm just glad to share some of it. From here on out, the stories get much, much creepier. Later that year, we had a fire in the house. A bedside lamp had fell over and had set a duvet alight. Firemen were called at God knows what time AM, and I stood outside in my pants with my mom and siblings watching the small blaze being tackled. The cause was never explained, though it was obvious the cause was that a lamp had set a duvet alight. Anyway, fires happen, so we'll ignore that. Anyway, a few weeks later, we go on a caravan holiday for 2 weeks. We had no idea what we were about to come home to. We arrive home and it was immediately obvious that the front main window had been smashed. We enter the home to find it in shambles, food packets strewn around the floor, beer cans, etc., talc powder / flour all over the floor. We'd been burgled. By kids by the looks of it, and it looked like they'd had a pretty good time making a mess before they left. Anyway, nothing was stolen because Mom had clearly left any valuables with neighbors and friends, but the house was a mess. Actually, my BMX was stolen. I'd had it only around 2 weeks, so I usually forget I ever had it. A neighbor confirmed a few nights ago that they had heard the sounds of breaking glass, then hours later, it seems they had returned to have an impromptu party at my house. Neighbors had heard noise, but didn't know the source until the next day. Anyway, the neighbor asks, "Did you have somebody looking after the house for a few days?" Apparently, the day after we left for the caravan holiday, neighbors had noticed a figure looking out of the windows during the day. At night, they reported seeing a silhouette through the curtains, again apparently keeping watch. We never found an explanation, and soon after, we moved house. I loved that house. It will always be my true home, and I'd move back there tomorrow, but I swear on my life, my kids' lives and my family's lives, and they'd agree that the house was haunted. Things didn't stop there, though. LOL. We moved to London, and after a year or two of moving around from home to home, we settled in a house in Rains Park near Wimbledon. It was a lovely area, full of trees and open grasslands. We'd bought a dog, Bonnie the staff, and Sis and I used to take her for long walks on Wimbledon Common, so everything was good. Things were looking up and the old house was forgotten about. Anyway, one night I'm laying in bed and I can hear the dog walking around my bed. I can hear and feel its footsteps as it's walking around the bed and its nails clicking on the carpet. Then it dived under the bed and is making a commotion. I can feel it pushing the mattress up from under me, so I say, "Oi, Bonnie, what are you doing? Come on, get up on the bed." To which there's no response. So again, I call out, "Come on the bed." Still no response. So annoyed, I throw my blanket off and get up and switch the light on. I get on my knees and look under the bed. Bonnie, she's not there. I call out, "Bonnie," and look around the room. Nothing. So I scratch my head for a second, then go downstairs to see where this damn dog is. Sure enough, she's curled up on the floor, snoring like a baby. "How long's Bonnie been there?" I asked my mom. "She's been here all night," was the response. This was the start of the haunting part 2. A few weeks later, I'm probably 11 or 12 at this point, I'm in my room doing whatever and decide to go for a piss. So I'm in the bathroom having a piss when I hear my brother behind me whisper through the door, "Beware of the dog." I jump out of my skin, then shout at him, "Stop messing around, I'm not scared." He'd often mess around, so I finish my piss and go looking for him. Nothing. I checked that whole house from top to bottom, expecting him to have found some new awesome hiding place that I hadn't noticed, but no. The only people at home were me, Alan, Mom's BF, and Bonnie the dog. Alan confirmed my bro had left the house hours ago. The voice was unmistakable. It was my brother's voice. I'm certain. I now put it down to imagination, as I have with all of my experiences, but it was so real to me that I simply cannot be sure. Again, I have no satisfactory explanation and refuse to believe in ghosts. Sorry if the stories are boring. In all cases, I'm just giving a true account of what happened and refuse to embellish any details for people's entertainment. That's not why I'm writing this. Also, if anyone has any ideas on these matters or has shared similar experiences, I'd love to hear them. That's the final story that we are showing here, and again, these ones really do feel different than almost every other ghost story I hear about. They really give me that feeling of something I could experience, but could struggle to find an explanation for. I'm not even going to attempt to prove or disprove them either, simply for the fact that when you are dealing with ghosts, it'll naturally just devolve into the age-old question of if ghosts are truly real or not, which isn't something I'm going to get into here. Once again, there were more stories than just the ones I showed, but I chose the ones that I in particular found the creepiest. To close this final post off, I'll just say that the subtlety of these stories, at least compared to most other ghost stories I hear about, was the main reason these ones moved me so much more. It truly makes me think of something somebody would tell me by a campfire, and for that, there was no better way to end the night. Thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to follow all of our social medias for updates and exclusive content. Those are all linked in the description. We would also love you guys to consider joining our Patreon, Debunk Plus. For only $1 a month, you get access to videos early, exclusive content, and podcasts. We just did a podcast on King Tut, so that should be coming out soon. And of course, make sure to like this video, share this with your friends, and subscribe. As always, my name is Sep from Debunk File. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye. Hi, and welcome to Debunk File. My name is Sep, and today we're going to be going on yet another 4chan deep dive. As a quick warning before this video begins, this episode will feature the discussion of some truly horrific things. All of our 4chan videos wind up getting pretty dark, but this is definitely the darkest one yet. So consider skipping this one if you are sensitive to the discussion of death, blood, gore, and other similarly disturbing things. With this being our 8th 4chan video, Jif and I originally wanted to make this video a special one and cover the worst of the infamous 8chan, but we realized that not only was that not the best idea, but it was also nearly impossible to find any posts on it at all. In case you didn't know, 8chan was basically a substitute for 4chan, where the site's worst members that actually got banned went to regroup somewhere new. They used 8chan so they would have a complete freedom of speech. And, well, the site is basically synonymous with hate speech, Nazis, and all the worst kind of debauchery the internet can offer. Most, if not all of the posts are completely gone as 8chan shut down after a string of shootings that were completely tied to it, and in 2019, it was gone. There isn't much to talk about when it comes to 8chan, nothing specific at least, but we felt we had to mention it at least once in our escapade to bring you the worst that 4chan has to offer. With that out of the way though, let's actually get into our deep dive for tonight. And well, the darkest one is up first. In November of 2014, a user randomly came into the random board with one of the most terrifying posts ever posted onto 4chan. The post itself said, "Turns out it's way harder to strangle someone to death than it is in the movies." The image accompanying it featured a lifeless, naked female body with considerable damage on the throat, and it didn't stop there. After that first post, he posted more images. Under the following one, he said, "She fought so damn hard." Now, 4chan has a very real history of actual fabrication when it comes to supposed members. And so even though the images posted looked incredibly real, people that saw the thread still had their doubts. That's when the OP said to check the news in Port Orchard, Washington in a few hours. He then described his plan to die of suicide by cop, and he subsequently said that he must be going now. Now right when it was first posted, the claim of the location didn't mean much yet since of course it wasn't on the news directly when he posted it, so people still had their doubts. But in a terrifying turn of events, the news would update.
A 33-year-old by the name of David Kalick has been arrested in Oregon after he turned himself in for murdering his own girlfriend in Washington. And then he posted 3 photos of her dead body on an online forum called 4chan.
The man behind the post was David Kalick. He had strangled 35-year-old Amber Copland to death. Most tragic of all, like he said in the final post, her 13-year-old son was the one to find her body. He supposedly wrote messages on the walls and even on her body, and got 82 years in prison thankfully. We obviously can't show images of the body, nor would we ever want to at all out of respect for everybody associated with this tragedy, but it easily stands as the most depraved moment I've ever seen in these journeys yet. The only other thing left to say regarding this post is simply our best wishes, and our hope that the Copland family is able to eventually heal from something like this. Now, something that is pretty common on 4chan is simply showing your battle stations, aka your gaming setups. Threads are posted daily of various users' setups for everybody else to judge, but there was one instance of this phenomenon where things got weird. It starts normal enough, with multiple people showing off their PC setups until someone posts an extremely off-putting setup with a strange lifelike doll sitting beside a laptop. The caption says, "Well, I think of it as more of a sanctuary than a battle station, but here you go." Users were immediately really creeped out and only get stranger as it goes on. Well, the teddy bear is called Samantha, and she is part of my family. I made her myself. I used the love seat because sometimes I like to move my desk out of the way and change my room into various fantasy themes. This is Samantha's younger sister, Stacy. This is where we hang out and play console games. She loves to have guests, but we never want them to leave. We don't let them. The more it goes on and on, the weirder it gets. He mentions that he never does anything bad or wrong with them, and that they are all part of the family, and that one day you can buy your very own on his website. Whether or not that ever came to fruition is unknown. The last picture in his string of strange posts is eerily haunting. Take a look for yourself. It really reminds me of something like I Feel Fantastic, and even kinda dips into the Uncanny Valley. The doll shouldn't be there with real people, but there she sits. Honestly, this post doesn't really have too much of a mystery either. You could definitely ask why the hell this person made all these dolls anyways, and what purpose do they truly serve, but it's not going to be too possible for us to answer those questions with what little we have here. These posts just genuinely weirded us out, and for that reason, we knew it had to be included. Be biologist. Be doing biologist. Buddies are setting cam traps on trees while I'm at camp trying to get a fire going. Fire won't catch. Bill sits next to me. Feels cold, but since everything was cold, never cared about it. This fucking lint won't make a spark. Where's Sam with the lighter? Keep complaining for a while. Realize the person next to me isn't talking. Feel a slight chill creeping up my spine. Slowly look ahead. Can see Sam and Bill's flashlights in the woods ahead. Who the fuck is sitting next to me? Turn around, all I see is something black. Nope. Wake up next day. Sam and Bill are standing on top of me, white as milk. I'm laying in the middle of the ground, a little bit away from the camp. They said that they heard screaming. When they came, I was nowhere to be seen. Had spent the whole night looking for me, shouting, yelling. All they got in response was a deep grunt. Try to get up. Pain everywhere. My face went, this is what it looked like when they tore my shirt off. My face when I'd torn both my pectoralis, as if I was trying to push/fight something away, to the point where my muscle tore, and broken 5 ribs and a clavic. My face when I'm never doing field trip work again. My face when every night I nope at the slightest feel of something brushing against me. There are 2 things that make this post stand out. The first being that the OP actually posted the damage they supposedly had gotten from the woods, and it is pretty gruesome. This story reminds me a lot of the movie The Ritual, in which campers in the woods awake to painful markings on their chests and are being stalked by a horned creature, although this post came way before the movie. But then there's one other thing. There was a reply that exact same day from a separate user saying this. Fort Campbell, Tennessee. This figure was captured on video in the same area by YouTube user James Jones. I named it Horn Man, but it could just be a bunch of trees. Now that you told your story, it made me think of it. Coincidence, or do we have a real thing here? If it was a bear, you wouldn't be here to post that story. Just saying. As for the actual validity of this post, I'm a little bit torn. It's obviously tough to believe a supposedly supernatural story, but the fact that the OP posted their actual injuries is very intriguing to say the least. You could of course make the argument that the OP got injured some other way and then made a story out of it, but it's up for you to judge how likely that actually is. As for the other post about the supposed YouTube video in the exact same location, I tried searching for it and I couldn't really find it anywhere. The screenshot from the video is pretty intriguing too, but since I can't find any instance of it anywhere at all, I can't really count it as too valid of evidence either. So, make your decision. Personally, I think the evidence does get a bit shallow the more you think about it, but at the same time, it is possible that the injuries did have something deeper to them after all. Whatever the case, I know that I will not be taking a trip to the woods anytime soon. Our final story of the night is a pretty famous one called Fridge Bro. I'm sure a lot of you are aware of this post, but if you are not, as a warning, it is absolutely disgusting. And for those that are aware, be sure to stick around, because we found some things about Fridge Bro that not everybody knows. Without further ado, let's get into this. Every night browse 4chan on phone in bed. Drain flies attracted to light so they bounce off phone. Get fed up one night and sob into pillow while drain flies bounce off my head. Dining room table is completely covered in old dishware and beyond mummified food. Plastic milk container rots and explodes. The smell was the most unpleasant thing I've ever experienced. As I'm out walking my dog one day, I keep him outside, a neighbor awkwardly asks why my windows are so dirty, and why I still have Christmas stickers up from like 4 years ago. Just forgot. Ha ha. Get sick and puke all over the toilet. Fall asleep and it's sticky and when I wake up, so I leave it. It's still there and I hover on the toilet now. Fridge won't shut, so it gets filled with bugs and rotten shit. Shove it into a corner and use mini fridge for a month. Eventually take a discarded fridge from neighbor's curb while it's right. Old fridge is still there. The only time I talk to people is when my neighbors say hello while I'm walking my dog every now and then. I have no real friends and no family, and I'm going to be found a rotten husk in my computer chair surrounded by filth when a government worker comes to see why I haven't picked up my NeatBucks check for the month yet. Anybody want some pictures? After saying all this, he proceeded to post some images, and they were among the most purely gross things I have ever seen. And the thought that someone was truly living in a situation this awful actually got under my skin. He even posted more details of exactly how atrocious the living conditions were. It's not ruined. It's got an eco-friendly patina preserving the structure. Mold and fungus are basically the structural backbone of the house. It lives and breathes. And on a hot day outside, the temperature is 12 degrees cooler outside and the air is 80% more moist. It is its own ecosystem of some very niche organisms that have all come together to form a wonderful symbiosis that started a sealed system of ecology. It's quite amazing, really. The whole thing is one giant organism. I'm betting that the organisms living there have evolved a defense mechanism to any new intruding life form, so it achieves a self-reliance. I'm willing to bet that by adding a source of food, you can grow a self-sustained ecosystem that would serve as a repopulation nucleus in the case of a full-on doomsday scenario, such as an all-out nuclear war or asteroid impact. You are doing your part to ensure some form of survival for life. Many more pictures would be posted, each getting grosser and grosser. That's when 4chan spotted sour cream in his rotting fridge and demanded he open it. The thread went absolutely berserk for this sour cream packet to be opened, and to nobody's surprise, it was utterly disgusting. The last thing he posted was the sour cream in the microwave. This would usually be the end of the story, but we found something that furthered the intriguing conversation that is Fridge Bro. It's pretty unknown what happened to Fridge Bro after this 4chan thread ended, and it's a very valid question to ask yourself considering just how bad the living conditions truly were. How was it even possible to live that way for so long? Is he still living that way to this day? Well, believe it or not, somebody actually found arrest papers. These papers showed that the infamous Fridge Bro was 41 to 42 at the time of his original post, and was an unemployed welder residing in Arkansas. The craziest part? The house he was in was a rental. At one point, after not being seen for a while, homeowners went to go look for him, and very quickly realized the condition of his home. Fridge Bro had apparently abandoned the place just a week prior to go see his mother, and eventually fled to Minnesota. Police arrested him at a hotel in Rochester in 2016 for an outstanding warrant related to the damages caused to the rental home, and he was also charged as a fugitive of justice, even though he claimed not to be aware of the warrant. So yeah, the fate of Fridge Bro wound up being way crazier than perhaps any of you may have expected. While we still can't find out what happened to him after 2016, the fact that we found all this is still really crazy. And that'll take us to the end of our dive. If there is any takeaway to make from this video, it's that while something horrific like our first post of the video is undoubtedly terrifying, things like these truly are rare in the realms of 4chan, despite what is often believed. But sometimes the scariest thing about browsing 4chan isn't necessarily that everybody on the website is some crazy fiend. Sometimes it's simply the way in which people live that winds up becoming the most disturbing, whether that be a decrepit home like Fridge Bros, or a disturbing doll-infested one like our second posters. 4chan seems to shed a lot of light on the creepy, often gross, and sometimes plain sad living conditions of some people out there. This site is often our only window into the worlds of these people, and also their only outlet. And despite the anonymous nature that the platform will always have, it can still be really telling. Thank you guys so much for watching this installment of our 4chan Deep Dive series. Make sure to follow all of our social medias for updates and exclusive content. They're all linked in the description. We would also love you guys to consider joining Debunk Plus. For only $1 a month, you get access to videos early, exclusive content, and our podcasts, which are coming back. After Jack, it was kind of hard, but they are coming back, we promise. And of course, make sure to like this video, share this with your friends, and subscribe. As always, my name is Seth from Debunk File. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye. Welcome back to another 4chan Deep Dive. We all know why we're here, so without any preamble, let's just get right into our 9th Deep Dive. Enjoy. Starting off strong with our first post of the night, we have a terrifying story that took place deep in the farmland of Wisconsin. 1991 was about 10 years old, poor as dirt, and lived out on a farm. By poor as dirt, I mean we literally had nothing. No TV, no cameras, and besides a radio, nothing. We lived in a really rural area in the northernmost part of Wisconsin, no neighbors for more than a few miles. At home alone because my mom and dad needed to go into town to get some supplies. Listening to some shit I can't remember when someone bangs on the door. Strange, since we normally don't get people out here. Go to the door. There's a fucking crack in the door. Motherfucker hit it so hard there was a crack in it. Peek through the crack to ask him what was going on. He was naked and covered in blood. Pick related. Ask him what the fuck he was doing on our doorstep. I got in a car accident. Can you let me in to call someone to pick me up? The dude's tone was flat, kinda like how a computer sounds when it speaks. Tell him to get the fuck out before I go all mafia on his ass. He smiles and says that I won't regret it if I let him in. Get freaked the fuck out and run upstairs to get my dad's shotgun. Was a small kid back then, so it was heavy to hold and almost knocked me flat when I first shot it. Motherfucker was reaching through the crack to try and get in. Shoots his ass. I knew I hit him because he pulled the fuck back and started running. Looked out the crack and got ready to shoot him again when I saw him running into the woods on 4 fucking legs. Not how a person walks or crawls on 4 legs. This dude was like a fucking bear or something by how he ran. Too scared to shoot him again. Parents come home to me crying in the corner with the gun next to me. Dad freaks the fuck out when I tell him what happened. He said I can have some of the ice cream he got me for while he went out and tried to look for the dude. Came back the next day and immediately called my uncle who lived in Milwaukee to come and pick me up. The night before my uncle picked me up, I was doing my chores and checking on the cows. The same dude was in the barn, eating one of the stillborn calves. Nope. Go back to the house and tell my dad that some guy was helping himself to a burger in our barn. Goes out there with the gun and threatens to skin the dude if he comes back. The guy just laughs and walks off into the woods. Never came back. I can't even begin to fathom the absolute terror he must have felt when a seemingly non-human man decided to pick his farm as his stomping grounds. With no pictures or any proof, it's hard to say whether or not this actually happened, but most green texts boil down to a 50-50 split. If real, maybe it wasn't even a creature, but rather someone on who knows what attempting a break-in. Truthfully, there are a lot of possibilities here, especially when this comes from the perspective of someone who is very young, which is the case here. Regardless if this is real or not, it is absolutely bone-chilling and a great reminder to never trust strangers. You never know what dark secret they may be hiding. For our second post of the night, we have somebody wondering about the origins of a really freaky looking puppet. Pick related, and this might be long, sorry about that. My friend has owned this mysterious thing for about 5 years now after his dad purchased it from a man in a bar. The man claims his dad made Joking Joey before he passed away, and the father voiced it himself. My friend has never questioned it, and while he finds it weird and mysterious, it's never really been an issue or something for him to look into further. A couple of other friends and I decided to research and have found out a couple of interesting things. A search for Joking Joey on the internet returns nothing except for a single YouTube video which shows the puppet in action.
Ladies and gentlemen, come here. The police stopped me today, in the car. He said, you came around that bend very quick. I said, I know. It said dangerous, and I wanted to go around as quick as I could. I mean, what sort of a question is that? He said you were doing 80 miles an hour. I said, I've only been in the car 20 minutes.
This puppet shown in the video appears to be in a different box to the one owned by my friend, and the puppet we have is wearing different clothes and the scenery has been rearranged, which is told by marks on the inside of the box, like things have been ripped up and moved. Could have easily been a reboxing issue, but that brings the question of why he's been reboxed. A look into www.bigboystoys.com's channel shows a video entitled On the News, so we watched it and figured out the man Martin Fillery is definitely connected to Joking Joey in some way or another, if he is the owner of bigboystoys.com.
A man from Bristol has gone car mad. He's decided to make a film about famous vehicles only seen in the movies.
Martin Fillery started videoing today and invited our cameras along to see some of the well-known cars in action.
After attempting to reach out to Martin on Facebook and my messages not going through at all, I decided to Google him and discovered that as of August 2017, he has been imprisoned for running an underground cannabis facility in a nuclear bunker involving slave labor. This is pretty much all of it on the research front, but other details include an empath friend of mine who is a psychic being able to confirm that Joey, or the box, has a spirit attached to it. We also turned him on last night for the first time in several months, and a few seconds into a track that has never been heard before by our friend who owns him, Joey shut off and then refused to work again. Now, after reading this crazy story, I decided to look into this unsettling doll and everything surrounding it myself to see if I could find anything else, and to confirm or deny any of the points that were said. As for that Big Boys Toys YouTube channel, it has since been renamed to Straight Jacket Spaceman, and is active as of just 7 months ago. As for the Martin Fillery portion, he had a massive collection of various merchandise, and was even written about before because of how rare some of what he had was. He also is undoubtedly connected to the Straight Jacket Spaceman channel, but it's not 100% clear exactly how. He is directly featured in a multitude of videos on the channel, but being just a collector, I didn't originally think that he was a legitimate part of the company, and with him not necessarily being featured in all the videos, I just figured he knew this company somehow and was a frequent buyer. However, I also found some videos of what is definitely him actually advertising the selling of some of these collectibles, so it looks like he really was a direct part of it after all.
Right, well this is Kermit the Frog, as he's just about to go on eBay. He's made of proper Antron fleece, so that means that you don't really get seams all over him.
As crazy as the claim sounded, Martin was actually imprisoned for running a cannabis operation in an abandoned Cold War nuclear bunker. Insane. Even more important to mention is that the sentence was not 18 years. That was the combined sentence for all 3 of the people involved that were arrested. Martin himself actually got 7 years, which means that by today, he would have been already out. If you check back on the YouTube channel, you'll actually notice a 5-year absence of videos. While that doesn't totally add up with the 7-year sentence, it did pick up again right precisely at the perfect time for him to get out. So it looks like he probably is in control of this channel after all. That just leaves one more question then, and that is, well, where did the doll really come from? And this answer still seems impossible to figure out. While it is in Martin's possession, he clearly was not the one that made it, as he also doesn't make any of the other things that get sold or shown on this channel anyways. As a commenter on the thread said, which I agree with, it seems that the only possibility here is that this was made super locally by someone, and there weren't many of them at all. Perhaps only even 2 of them, since we have not seen a single other one at all pop up on the internet. Either that or Martin had 2 of them and was that man at the bar that sold it to the friend's dad. And well, that's all we can really say so far. As for the psychic stuff, there's nothing we can possibly say about all that, so we won't even bother. If any leads are found revolving more of these puppets showing up, please let us know. For now though, we will just continue on the dive. Moving on to our third post, it entails the mundane task of working at a retail store. I'm sure many of you guys can relate to being stuck at work late at night, drifting off into sleep, waiting for your chance to get the hell out of there. Personally, I know the feeling. The worst is when things start to feel a bit eerie and your brain starts to play tricks. But what if there aren't any tricks and the horror is truly in the building with you? Well, this is what the OP experienced. It's the closing shift at work. Our store, retail, stays open till 6, but our shitty boss makes us stay later if customers are shopping. I work the dressing room. As I'm walking to the giftware section, I see a customer in the shoe section. A tall woman with a thin face, long hair. Something immediately feels off. I ignore it, just waiting for her to pick out a pair of shoes and leave so we can close. 4 to 5 minutes passed. I leave for less than a minute to go help another customer. I go to check on the lady, she isn't there. Oh good, now we can close. Go up front, see that my coworkers are all talking. Hey, did that lady check out? All look at me weird. What lady? I describe her. Everyone says they haven't seen her leave. I go recheck the dressing room, shoes, giftware, she's nowhere to be found. I get this horrible, horrible feeling in my stomach. I'm scared shitless as I go to bring hangers to the back. Coworkers had already turned off all the front store lights, just waiting for me to come back. As I approach the horde of empty boxes we put hangers in, I see a pile of clothes on the floor. Check the tags. They are definitely not clothes we sell. Smelled horrible, like someone hadn't washed them in months. Decides to throw the clothes away despite knowing I shouldn't. I scope out the rest of the back despite not wanting to. Didn't find any customers hiding or signs someone came in through the back door. Tries to forget it. Goes up front, walks out with coworkers. Coworker goes to get in her car, lets out a huge gasp. There is a pile of bloody human shit right next to it. We all check it out, confirms it's definitely way too big to be dog shit. Looks closer. There's large chunks of glass and hair in it. Everyone is laughing, but I'm scared shitless. I don't say anything about the clothes I found. Still think about it every time I have to bring hangers to the back. Now, before this, I mentioned having that sense of dread in a quiet retail store after hours. Personally, I've never experienced something this terrifying, but I do have my fair share of odd experiences. 2 of the freakiest have got to be, one night while stocking, a completely undisturbed sugar pack just fell right off of the shelf. It sure startled me, but I kind of realized that those packs are often uneven and can fall for no reason at all. My other frightening experience was while working at the front, I noticed the same man come into the store multiple times, but each time he came in, he was wearing something completely different. About 5 or 6 times he came in on the same day and just looked a little different each time. I still have no idea if it was something supernatural, if I was losing my mind, or maybe the man was just really into fashion. It'd be impossible to know. our fourth post takes us ghost hunting in a very quiet graveyard, where things just aren't quite right. Anyone ever encounter ghost breathing? I've dealt with it most of my life, and I literally cannot find anything on this phenomenon. Ghost hunters don't look for this shit. Nobody writes about it online. I'm assuming because it's just such a minor thing. When I used to stay in my old house and I'd be alone in my room, I swear I could hear breathing coming from somewhere in the room while I drifted off to sleep. Also, green text. Be me, edgy as fuck 19-year-old. 1 month till I ship off for boot camp, so spending my paychecks doing random shit that piques my interest. Decide I'm going ghost hunting by myself in a graveyard. Google haunted graveyard maps near me. Round Rock Cemetery. Bingo. Drive there a little before sunset. Wander around, read the plaques, take some pics. Pretty cool historical shit there. Dusk hits. Decide I should probably leave before dark in case the cops think I'm vandalizing the place. Walking back to my car. Hairs on the back of my neck stand up. Realize I can hear someone breathing behind me. Think it's just a tree rustling or brushing up against a little gazebo. Turn to verify said tree. As soon as I 180, breath comes from directly behind me, as if right in my ear. Absolutely nope the fuck out of there immediately. Go back with a friend a week or two later. Nothing happens. Any of you other Annans hear ghost breathing, or is this just me needing to take my meds? At the start of the video, I explained how green texts are 50-50 when it comes to being real or not. This is one I think is pretty much 99% real. Whether or not it really was a vengeful spirit would be impossible to confirm, but going into a seemingly haunted graveyard with the mindset to catch a poltergeist in the act would already set you up for a scare. The OP could have hyped himself up so much that he felt and heard what he wanted to hear. It's the same sort of phenomenon we talked about all the way back in Clinton Road. Psyching yourself out into hearing or seeing something is a very real thing. Whatever really happened, this story is beyond creepy. And who knows? It could have really been a ghost. And when you have ghosts, I mean, who could you really call? And on this edition, you're all quite lucky, because we have a bonus post. For our final post of the night, we have a poster who dared to ask the OP something extremely disturbing. Ask a guy who works at McDonald's anything. Where do you work? McDonald's. I still don't understand the inner workings of this man's mind, to ask something so absolutely terrifying. Some people think they deserve answers, but sometimes that answer may not be what they want to hear. And that brings us to the end of our 9th 4chan deep dive. You guys really enjoy these videos, and we really enjoy making them too. As for this edition, there definitely were more green text than usual, and this was due to a couple of different reasons, but regardless of all that, we'd really appreciate you all sharing some of your own creepiest finds on 4chan you have to offer, as we might just feature them in the future. We've also thought about doing deep dives on other platforms in the future. If we do that, what would you guys suggest? If the answers are overwhelmingly, stay with 4chan, then that's exactly what we'll do. But we want to hear some feedback and opinions about this idea, and what other social media you all would like to see us explore and deep dive into. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, make sure to like this video and comment down below and send us some of the 4chan stuff you've got. All of our social medias and links are in the description below, and if you'd like to help out the channel, please consider donating to our Patreon. Only a $1 a month and you get access to everything on Debunk Plus. We have podcasts, early stuff, all that kind of stuff. As always, my name is Sep from Debunk File. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye. Welcome back to another one of our infamous 4chan deep dives. Before we get started, I do want to give an update. This will be the end of the first season of 4chan deep dives. This series will absolutely return, don't worry, but for a little while we'd like to take a break and focus on some other websites that deserve their very own Debunk style deep dive. We've mentioned this before, but be sure to send us your creepiest posts from around the internet, whether that be from MySpace, Tumblr, or even TikTok. No social media is ruled out at all, so be sure to send anything you may find. One last thing before we get started, a little content warning. Our last post is quite gruesome, but it is censored. For those who would like to see the video without any censorship, it will be on our Patreon Debunk Plus. Alright, enough talk. It's time for our 10th 4chan deep dive. So as always, sit back, relax, and let's explore this website once more. For our first post, the OP inquires about video game AI that break their coding and seemingly start to think for themselves. Anyone have any creepy stories of AI in games becoming self-aware? I remember reading once that a monster that was meant to be fought late in a game went out of bounds to search for the player in some random RPG. In another, a guy was stalked by an AI. Over the years, there have been tons of stories of haywire video games. Some of the most classic internet tales are based on this concept. Ben Drowned, Lavender Town, and anything else that could have hyper-realistic detail to spook readers. But of course, we're here to look for the real stuff. Unfortunately, as interesting as it sounded, I couldn't find anything on the RPG monster or the stalking AI. Lucky for us, the thread did have a solid amount of replies, one of which being about a supposed experiment in Quake 3. There's also the Quake 3 experiment, where a bot match was allowed to run for 2 years. After a while, the bots became passive towards each other, but became violent once a player came in and attacked one of them. This experiment actually draws birth from another 4chan post. In Quake 3, the AI is designed to adapt to specific scenarios, and this OP had the idea to place a bunch of bots into a server to match up against each other, and just leave them there to see what happens. The OP winds up forgetting about all of this for 4 entire years, where they finally loaded up the game again, all to see that the bots are standing totally still, just looking at each other. He then wanted to see what happened if he himself joined the game, and the results were just as weird. The bots turn to look at him, but none fired. Then he shoots one and the bots attack him, and before we can find out whether or not they turn their weapons on one another, the server crashes. I did manage to find a Forbes article about this Quake 3 experiment, and their take on it is the same as ours. It's most likely not real, and is impossible to prove, since this was just a 4chan thread and featured no images or videos with it. It actually has since been shown that in a paper from the developers about the Quake bots, they mention how, although neural networks can be useful in several areas in bot AI, they are not used for the Quake 3 arena bot, which effectively debunks this entire story. While those were the 2 instances mentioned in the thread, I wanted to go search on my own for any other possible examples of video game AI seemingly going haywire, and I did find something. Our one possible legitimate example of self-aware AI comes from Shadow of War's Nemesis system. To briefly explain the Nemesis system in the simplest of terms, enemies will remember you. They remember killing you, being killed by you, and everything in between. It's a brilliant and terrifying idea that gives way to a really freaky story. Coming from Brian Graber on IGN, he explains in how his first playthrough, the first orc you mind control is Bruise the Chopper, and he isn't randomly generated either. Every single player must encounter Bruise, albeit he doesn't show up until around halfway through the game. Well, a while after this first playthrough, Brian returned to play again, booting up a new game. Brian is met with a Bruise that shouldn't exist at nearly that point in the game, scarred and slurring his words like a late-game badly beaten Bruise. According to the writer, Bruise only appears when your mission is to dominate him during a pivotal story point in the mid-game region of Nern. Instead, I've just been ambushed by this character in what's basically the tutorial zone, and I'm not currently in any story missions, let alone his. His old game was even deleted, so this glitch is pretty much impossible. From Brian's own words, he said, "By subverting deletion and death, Bruise the Chopper has already become a bigger and better nemesis to me than Sauron ever could. The various personalities and grudge matches against orcs in Shadow of War have always been a focal point of creating your own memorable stories. But Bruise has taken things to the next level. He's continuing a plot I left unresolved in a previous playthrough, and has wasted no time to force a confrontation on his terms, not mine. That terrifies me, and I love it." He mentions how in this state, Bruise doesn't even introduce himself properly, and instead makes bizarre snarls that don't sync up with his animations. As a final note, he mentions getting to the point in the game where you were supposed to meet Bruise, and he's there, completely normally. But there is a catch. He mentions beating this Bruise and making him join his army, but upon returning to the orc army at the starting area of the game, he noticed that the glitched Bruise was still there. So there are now 2 Bruises in his game. The good thing about all of this is that there's actual picture proof, and even a short video too. And while that definitely does help the validity of all this, there are still ways to fabricate what we are seeing. While it definitely feels more real than any other examples I could find of video game AI seemingly coming alive, I'm still skeptical about whether it is. Faking something like this does come with its loads of advantages, such as the fact that we're even reading this right now, but it is definitely told in a way more grounded way than, say, a creepypasta. However, this is a professional writer after all. Something that may possibly help its case is something that many game developers on the initial thread were trying to say, and that's basically that glitches are just too unpredictable. Multiple commenters mentioned creating games and not even being able to understand half the bugs and glitches that they produced. Maybe this specific instance was just an extremely unlikely glitch that happened to the writer. One other thing that may help the case of this all is just how IGN works in general. It's no secret that they give very, very positive reviews to lots of games, and it's theorized by many that they're likely paid by companies to do this type of thing. My question now is whether they'd risk purposely publishing a fake article that could effectively make the game look worse, since this would classify as a bad glitch. To me, that doesn't sound very likely. On the other hand, you could say that it's written in a way so that people may want to buy it to possibly experience this extremely rare glitch. Overall, it could truly go either way. Despite that, the concept of it all is still intriguing all the same. If you have any experiences of this sort when it comes to video game AI, we'd love to hear them. Maybe someday far in the future, self-aware video game AI might become common. Our next post is one about a terrifyingly haunted film that made its rounds on 4chan a while back, but came back to the surface in a chilling way. Years ago, some Anon B started making threads about an old film from the early 90s, existing only on 1 or 2 VHS tapes somewhere in rural Scandinavia, called Nocturnal Pulse. It was supposed to be the real Grifter, the hyper-spooky meme movie that didn't exist but was used to scare newbies, an actual film that would drive you to insanity or suicide. Really quickly, let's explain the Grifter, just in case you all aren't familiar with it. Basically, in 2009, someone came onto the site with a post titled, The Grifter, in a purposely vague manner. They simply said, "I wish I'd never seen it. I seriously feel disturbed, like it ruined something deep down within my soul. I'll never be the same." Attached to the post were some truly disturbing images, though they were thankfully later proven to be fake, as well as this entire incident. Basically, the whole point of The Grifter was to describe being absolutely horrified by it, but you purposely describe it vaguely so that people would ask question upon question. It became a major meme on the site, and since this post makes a mention of it, definitely keep that in the back of your mind as we continue. Other Anons chimed in, some dismissive, others claiming to know about the film or even having seen bits and parts of it, all of them agreeing that it was the darkest, scariest shit ever. A short clip was uploaded in one thread around 2009, linked to either YouTube or Vimeo. I don't recall, my memory of the whole shit is hazy. But when I tried to play it, my computer crashed and I had to reboot it. All I managed to see was a fading image of an owl-like bird, but not quite. The eyes seemed human or humanoid, that seemed to look at and past the viewer, and a sound that I cannot adequately describe or recall. Iron grinding on stone mixed with faraway screams and a low brown notish hum. And I had the feeling that my very existence was coming apart. Since then, it's been dead silent. If I make a thread about it on B, it's either ignored and 404'd, pruned, or someone might pop up and tell me to never mention that film again. This is the first time I post about it here, on X. Does any of you know about this? After reading the post, before we make our ultimate conclusions, I wanted to see just how many more mentions of this post there were on 4chan, and surprisingly, there was actually a lot. Recently, many posters mentioned it being on some sort of iceberg list which I was unaware of, but I was more so curious on finding its much older mentions, if there were any. Lucky for us, there actually is a mention of it as far back as 2011, and with it we begin seeing a common theme when it starts being mentioned. The deepest movie I ever watched in my entire life is hands down Nocturnal Pulse, nothing comes close. It's the deepest because it can only be downloaded from Mariana Web. This post obviously is written in a snarky fashion, and so are many of the other mentions of it, as we can see here. The post that we happened to stumble on when we were looking for topics for this video was not even close to the first one, and there had actually been many people asking about the legitimacy of Nocturnal Pulse beforehand. As we can see, many mentions of this film are just like the aforementioned grifter. People are purposely being vague with it. One thing that has been brought up that I have actually confirmed as seemingly being true is the mysterious gap between any mentions of Nocturnal Pulse, at least ones that I can still view within archives. As I said, the first mention of Nocturnal Pulse that I could find was all the way back in 2011, and after that, I didn't find another until all the way in 2017, where it then became semi-frequent, which is admittedly pretty strange. Even looking past that, the post we originally read mentioned Nocturnal Pulse being talked about as far back as 2009, which could mean another gap happened. However, in general, the way in which Nocturnal Pulse is mentioned as a whole is so similar to the grifter that I'm convinced it's just another attempt to create a grifter-like meme. Going back to the original post we found now, the description of the video and what it did to the OP's computer does not read in the most truthful way, and definitely reeks of author feel that we mentioned back in our 6th deep dive. Especially with the grifter-like knowledge we have now. I'm not convinced that this tape ever existed at all. Many of the posts asking about its existence are probably people curious just as we were, but the original post we happened to stumble on may be a little too specifically written to qualify as that. In conclusion, if you want to experience the closest thing you can to Nocturnal Pulse, you should probably watch whatever everybody was watching in The Ring. For our third post of tonight's dive, we have someone living on a large piece of land, convinced that something strange might be happening. Something is happening. I live out in the middle of nowhere. I moved here 2 months ago and my parents are coming to visit me. When I searched my house on Google to give them directions, I noticed a small box behind my house which seems to be a trailer of some sort. I own a lot of land out here. It's my property. I own about 3 square miles. Now I went out a few minutes ago and the trailer is a 3 to 4 minute walk into the woods. There is a light on in the trailer, but there is no road or anything that connects it. It's pretty deep in the woods. The road I live on goes far out, and I'm the last house on this street. I'm thinking about going to investigate it. Should I? Now, this is a lengthy thread, as many questions would be asked and many more will be answered, so I'll only be reading the most important of ones. After this post, people naturally wondered whether maybe a homeless person was living in there, and also asked for pictures, which were given. Eventually the OP would go out to investigate, saying the following. Right, guys, sorry to break the bad news. It turns out somebody is in fact living there, and has been living off the land for around a year now. When I walked up to the house, I saw a shadow looking out the window, so at that point I really had no choice but to go up and knock. So I did, and it was a man in his late 40s, early 50s. He admitted he was stealing power from me, however, other than that, he's been living off the land and even has a garden and plants for food. I'm probably not going to evict him or anything, I could care less as long as the guy's friendly. I told him to come over tomorrow and we can talk. I was going to take some pictures, but it was dark, and he would know I was taking pictures because of the flash. I didn't want to anger him or anything, so I guess I'm going to talk with him in the morning. I will most likely let him stay. Sorry for the boring ending. Nobody died tonight. So while this certainly would be something that would creep me out if I was in this situation, it seemed to have went over pretty well for the most part. And, well, that's it, right? Well, now I heard a gunshot. I didn't shoot off a gun and it sounded like it was from a distance. He wasn't shooting at me. Somebody is knocking at my door. I see 2 shadows, not one. The guy is not alone. I'm not answering the door, I'm staying in my house. I have a shotgun and I'm in a good position. I have a handgun and an assault rifle as well. I'm in a corner so I don't have to watch my back. From here on out, things seem to start going down majorly. As more updates are given, we read the OP fire at someone, call the police, and that's just the beginning. Eventually, the people from outside get in, where the OP shoots and kills one. And the craziest part is how it ends. Guys, my house is on fucking fire. The other guy lit it on fire. I'm now in my car, going down the road. The craziest part of all is that he shows proof. He also shows an image of cops arriving on the scene with this message. Police are on the scene along with a few fire trucks. They got here pretty fast. Much faster than they said. And then we reach the final message, where things end abruptly. Guys, I'm being detained and I've been asked to get out of my car. Sorry, I'm being arrested it seems. Might just be a temporary thing, but the cop isn't taking no for an answer, sorry. Watch the news in the morning for this. And after that, the OP did not return. In general, what do we think about the legitimacy of these posts? Well, not likely. The only tricky thing going against all of this is the images given, especially the house fire one. Reverse image searching them does not give us any matching images of them at all. Now the police image is one thing. It's very possible to take an image of cops driving by or being on a scene or something. That much isn't hard to do. But the house fire image is not exactly the everyday occurrence. This definitely airs a piece of legitimacy on this whole thread that is very unusual for ones like this. But to me, there is only one thing that makes this story fall apart, and that is the fact that it was constantly being updated the entire time. To stop and think for a moment, if you were feeling extremely threatened by some people and then a full-out gunfight started, would you be writing to 4chan in the midst of all of it? I don't think so. The one last piece of information that could seemingly prove or disprove everything here is the ending. Watch the news in the morning for this. This is something that has happened multiple times on 4chan and actually ended up proving posts that had happened before, usually in very dark ways. But this post does not seem to be the case here. For one, the poster never said what state they even lived in, which makes a news search very difficult. I tried searching possible articles about house fire gunfights during the dates right after all these posts came to 4chan, but that proved futile in the end. Overall, I do not think this post was real. Despite how interesting the images that were given to us were, there must be some sort of explanation for those, because to me the amount of things going against this story is a little too much for me to believe it. However, the thought of somebody living on your own property unbeknownst to you, and ultimately striking, sure is a scary one. For our next post, we're moving into the straight up absurd. I'd like to introduce you to the 4chan Joker. As far as these normal 4chan posts go in these videos, this one is entirely unique, because I can't even find the first instance of this occurrence happening. All I know is that it happens in waves, and it happens often.
Watch the news tomorrow, 5 p.m. I'm serious. Let me ask you something, B. How many times have you been treated like... How many times have you felt excluded? How many times have you had to put on a happy face going out into the world? A fake happy face. Let me tell you, none. You live your lives happy, while I, suffer. We're all the same who bully me and stop me from being God. You shall see soon. Chaos. I am not normal, Anon. I would never change who I am, and people have to respect me for what I am. This is what will change in my world. Chaos. Controlled, but chaos. I've had enough. Check your news tonight. Don't want you to miss out on the birth of a new world.
As you can see, these posts seem to depict a 4chaner dressing up and doing makeup as if they were in fact the Joker. He tries to speak like him and gives vague threats, such as saying to check the news in case something happens.
Oh, Oanons, you think you can help me. In reality, I am as crazed as they come. Go on, keep laughing. Joker always has the last laugh, no matter what. Chaos, suffering, repentance. The voices must be right.
In some of the other posts, the Anon also shows his weapon collection, which is quite concerningly large to say the least. Really, the craziest thing about this whole ordeal is just how frequent it is in general, and because of that, other Anons are, as a result, either very dismissive of this entire thing or very aggressive. 4chan does have a history of threats actually being carried out on occasion, but it also has a history of threats of this sort being made where nothing at all winds up happening. The common belief among 4chaners is that this is some sort of LARP, and that's a belief that does seem to make sense. His warnings have been given several times, and to our knowledge, and especially with him still giving them after over a year of doing these posts, nothing has seemingly happened yet. But even in terms of LARPs, this one still feels very weird. The amount of time spent making these posts on a platform that is entirely anonymous does perplex me a bit, as does just how long this entire thing has lasted. From what I can find, this has been going on for over a year, and still to this day you can occasionally find him on B doing it some more. And as I said, there would be like hundreds of these posts, all written uniquely and with different images each time. It's an unusual situation. The one other question left here is simply, who is this person in the first place? Due to the face of the person being shown in the majority of these images, it seems that this would make that search a lot easier than most cases like this, and could also serve to definitively answer the LARP question once and for all. Well, the results are definitely fascinating. After reverse image searching a number of these Joker images and finding nothing, I did finally get lucky with one of them, which brought me to a Reddit post of a cosplayer, featuring this image which has been used in multiple posts. If you go to the Reddit profile, it also provides an Instagram link, which shows basically dozens of the other images that had been used in these posts. If you look at how this user types, it's pretty clear that this is most likely not the same guy. That would mean that the 4chaner somehow found these images and used them for all of his posts. With that being said, there is still one more mysterious thing left. There is one image that stands out, and it's of a paper that actually says Joker with the date that this specific post was from, right next to a gun which happens to look like some of the many other weapons that this account had shared, and that were also used. Obviously, the inclusion of the paper makes this one stand out more, and the reverse image search results for this one are extremely weird. The image is no longer available or is not publicly accessible. Out of all of the reverse image searches I have ever done, I've never ever had a result like that come up before. If there is a specific reason for it, you can definitely feel free to comment below what may have happened. But it almost seems like an image was purposely removed off of a social media platform or something like that. Or whatever page had this image recently went private. But that's all I can think of. Whatever the case, this one image definitely adds a strange layer to this whole thing. But if you look even closer at the image, I think I also found something that may even make it fall apart too. Take a look at the hand and paper, and notice the very slight black outlines. If you take a picture of your hand or simply place it in front of a camera, it's not going to have black outlines like that. This looks like a hand that was cropped out of some other sort of background and placed here next to the weapon. As you can see, this incredibly strange series of posts does seem to be a LARP after all. But even with that being said, this was still by far the most absurd one I have ever seen, and I think it definitely deserved its spotlight on this fine deep dive. And for our final post of the night, we have a short one simply about the OP asking about the backstory of a very haunted image. Post pics you want the story behind. In before haunted house. Never saw proof of this. The image in question seems to depict two bloody men. The one closer to the camera has it dripping down his chest and is smiling, while the other guy seems to be on some sort of table, with his legs completely opened, obviously showing where the blood came from. Strangest of all, both of them are smiling, and the guy with the cut open leg has his thumb up to the camera. The rest of the image isn't much, but gives a small idea as to where these two people might be, which is important. The room in general is small, dark, and cramped, and there's blood all over the walls too, even including a handprint. Overall, all of this definitely has me suspicious. There have been a few legitimate cases of consented cannibalism, which is what I saw some people theorizing, but I definitely don't think that is the case here. If you look at the image closely, it almost appears as if the person on the table is actually standing behind the table and is just lined up with a fake pair of legs. The aforementioned handprint on the wall and the overall blood on the wall looks pretty artificial too. Once again, we reverse image search this image, and this time it finally worked. I knew that with a super high quality image of this sort, there would be loads of information about it, and sure enough, people all over the internet have asked about where this image came from, and there's even been articles made about it, one of which actually giving us our answer. This image resides within the Atlanta Chambers of Horror, a haunted house within the area that prominently features gore effects exactly like the one pictured above. So, there you have it. This extremely mysterious and freaky image has been solved, much to the poster's dismay. It was in fact from a haunted house. And like last time, we do have a bonus post, so consider yourselves lucky once more. Paintings indicate that early humans had some pretty heavy stuff weighing on their minds, archaeologists said.
A head time scare, Grug. Grug not know what do.
To be honest, I've never heard anything deeper. Lines like this are ones that truly stick to you. The plight of Grug is one of hardship, and to me there was no other possible way to end this video than by sharing it. And that's going to do it for this edition of 4chan Deep Dive. As you can see, this one was a little bit longer than usual, which we felt was definitely fitting for it being the 10th edition, and the final one of the season. As we said, 4chan is going to be taking a small break for now, but again, it will definitely be back, I promise. While 4chan certainly is a website full of depravity, it has an aura that always brings us back. Thank you guys so much for watching. As always, make sure to like this video, make sure to comment down below, make sure to send in whatever websites you want us to cover, send in some creepy posts from around every corner of the internet. All of our social medias are linked in the description below. Our Patreon Debunk Plus is $1 a month and you get access to a ton of stuff, especially the uncensored version of this video. As always, my name is Sep from Debunk File. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye. If you made it through this binge or just skipped to the end, you are in luck. 4chan Deep Dive Season 2 will continue starting January 2023. But until then, keep your eyes on the channel as we have some amazing docus and videos coming up. As always, my name is Sep from Debunk File. Thank you for binging with us.